I believe that the world is returning to its pagan past. The power of the Western Veil is withering with each passing moment. We need to truly return to the New Testament teachings of Christ and/or Christians, so as to combat the coming madness and onslaught. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. Ephesians 5:11.
Howdy, y'all. Good evening, one and all. It
Good
is
evening, everybody.
a wonderful evening. Almost not evening for me, but
Oh, you
that's
have
okay.
a switched.
What's that?
Ricky swapped us.
I did. Do you want to switch us over here? Is that better?
That is better.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm a creature of habit. Sorry,
It's
guys.
okay. It's okay. You'll notice that I have a fancy frothing cauldron and a awesome new sign back here, which I am very, very proud of. I didn't make the cauldron, but I did make the CTDW thing that you guys can see in the background. I think it's very awesome.
It is very cool.
Thank you. So the reason that I was actually leaving us that way, there's a reason I'm telling the story. I hope you guys like it, by the way. But the real reason I was telling the story is because when we were the other way around, I was staring at the cauldron and I was like kind of mesmerized by it because it's brand new and I just got it. And so I was like, I don't want to be, if I look at the cauldron while it's like allowing all this smoke and stuff to come out, Shelly won't notice that I'm not looking at her when I'm listening to her talk. So now I have no choice. No, I'm listening. It's just that I get distracted. I have ADD. What can I do?
No, I'm not even mad.
So anyway, hello guys. How you doing? That's as you know, this is the way we always start. We have a very cool discussion that we're going to have this evening. For you, it's probably daylight out, and you're probably enjoying our lovely voices. Mine only at the moment. We are talking today about times, alignments, rituals, and ceremonies. And this is all under the rubric of the Portals segment, or the Portals Saga, as I'm titling it. It's really portals, stargates, liminal spaces, and thin places. But really, I'm just titling it the Portals Saga because that's what it has to do with. All of these are what allow us to come into liminal or thin places, as I like to call them. And it's all centered around that idea. And what better time and subject matter to deal with right around Halloween than rituals, ceremonies, and all that other good jazz.
Right.
And there's a lot of tie-in to each other. Like these really dovetail a lot in a lot of ways. Found a lot of similarities and a lot of peculiarities as well. So we'll get started here in a second, but Shell, how you doing?
I am well. I just remembered a thing I wanted to touch on, so I'm trying to pull back up the information I had found on it.
Nice. Last minute stuff. It's funny, we've been talking
Always
about this for a long time. And it just kept getting put off, but it actually probably was better because we got a lot more information just kind of piled on. So you guys are probably going to enjoy this one a lot. I would like to show you guys something that we finally got, and I want to give a special shout out to one of our patrons who I will leave unnamed just out of respect for identity. But we have got these bad boys all finished up.
They're so cool looking. I'm so excited.
Oh man, it's so great.
They are awesome.
If you would like one or several or one of each or whatever, please just contact me. I'm still looking at the best way to put them online so that we can buy them. You could buy them directly without having to talk to us. But they will be out. Woo! So you guys can see that one a little better. Transhuman. If you would like to get one, please do not hesitate in reaching out. In the next little bit here, I was hoping to already have them up and good to go, but they are done, and so I will probably be putting them on Facebook. I might just do, just like direct to buy or something like that, and I'm actually trying to put them on TikTok. Believe it or not, there's actually a little store that they have there now. So, yeah, if you're interested, let me know. Let me know, guys, or let either one of us know. We obviously, you guys know our plugins. Solo.to/ctdw. You can find all of our plugins there. That is all of our social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, which is now X, Instagram, and TikTok. Those are the 4 main ones that we use. You can listen to us on Spotify and on YouTube. My finger's all weird. And I am a little bit quicker now, but slowly migrating all of our stuff onto Rumble as well. And hopefully, I mean, I'm very iffy with YouTube because I'm not digging it too much. I'm also looking into potentially just posting all of our behind the scenes stuff directly to Patreon. If you're a Patreon subscriber, just like if you subscribe with Spotify, which you can do for $3 a month, by the way, or on Patreon for as
a
little
mere
as that.
$3.
It's only $3 a month, and you get early access to all our stuff. You can do that on Spotify or on Patreon. I'm trying to get it set up to where both cross over, and you can just use one and the other. It's been a little bit of a headache, but I'm working on it. And you'll get early access to stuff. You'll get behind-the-scenes stuff and special episodes, which are, sometimes a little bit few and far in between, but we are always putting out new content, and you're always getting early access to it, especially if you are subscribed. So thank you guys, patrons and Spotifyers. Thank you guys alike. We love you guys. It is super inspiring that you guys invest in us and invest in the kingdom, man, because ultimately that is the purpose of our podcast, is to spread the word of the gospel and
That's right.
unveil the things of darkness. So that's what we're here for, man. Shell, I guess we're ready to roll. Do you want to start with anything, or do you want me to get started? Where should we do this?
I think you get to start. You had a really great thing that you were going to say to start, if you remember, and I think that's where you should start.
Let's do it. I'm going to define what kind of our terms are: times, alignments, rituals, and ceremonies. Times and alignments kind of are pretty along the same lines, and rituals and ceremonies actually, coincidentally, are fairly along the same lines as well, but they do have differences. So without further ado, let me go ahead and give you a quote that I think is super relevant to kick off this episode. It says the following: "I believe that the world is returning to its pagan past. The power of the Western veil is withering with each passing moment. We need to truly return to the New Testament teachings of Christ and or Christians, so as to combat the coming madness and onslaught." That being said, let me define for you guys, and I'll let Shell chime in anywhere she wants to, about kind of these definitions. So let's start with times. I think that's pretty easy. The Bible, the word, God describes times as seasons, signals or signs in the sky so that we can see what adjustments are happening, what things are moving, how things are progressing, what to expect, what to prepare for, right? All those things. Those can be signs in the heavens. Usually that's the way, essentially that's how we measure time. There are other ways to measure time, but essentially that is what we're referring to for the most part, are the signs in the heavens, and really, the shifts of the solar and what we call them planetary bodies, right? The astral bodies and their alignments and their continual movements. Alignments is right along the same vein, right? But this particularly has to do with a lot of the equinoxes, right? The equinox and excuse me. Oh gosh,
Solstices.
solstice. Thank you. Um, and just the aligning, the eclipsing, um, when the moon is at its high point. How's it labeled here? I'm trying to remember what it's called. Um, the lunar nodes. When we look at both lunar eclipses and solar eclipses, we just had one actually, right? This week we had a solar
Yeah,
eclipse.
last
Um,
Saturday.
yeah, yeah. And how each one of those bodies moves and how they're relevant to us and how they're relevant to mankind in general, how they're relevant to God. Really, we're going to be covering all that. So that is all of the alignments, and then how those things correspond and inform how humans align things here on Earth in accordance to the heavens. And if you watched any of our megalith stuff, you will know very well that that is a very, very common theme. And we'll be touching a little bit on that today as well. Rituals. Rituals and ceremonies. This was kind of hard for me to pinpoint. I thought I had it nice and figured out, and then I went back and I went, oh no, maybe I don't have it very figured out. Um, I I think it's probably, well, yeah, let's start with ritual. That's fine. A ritual is essentially a symbolic representation of what one considers to be normal in their culture, but I want to elaborate on that a little bit. Really, it involves rules and regulations and symbolic repetition. Whereas a ceremony might not necessarily, but can also be ritualistic, right? I mean, there are ritualistic ceremonies and there are ceremonial rituals. So they kind of do go in hand in hand. But why is a ceremony a little bit more different? Well, it's not necessarily repeated always the same way. And there tends to be a little bit, obviously, a little bit more spontaneity, but there also tends to be a larger corpus present when there is a ceremony. Not always, but largely there is a larger group of people present
Right.
when there's a ceremony. But there can also be a large group of people present for a ritual as well, right? So these are slightly different, but they do largely kind of line up with each other. No pun intended. Um, I should also mention I thought it was really interesting that when I was kind of finding this definition, I ran across a little piece of data that I thought was like, oh, that's very interesting. Freud believed that ritual stemmed from sacrifice. I thought that was very, very interesting. And before sacrifice, it is believed that there was in mainstream, um, what we call it, anthropology, that totemism was supposedly a proto-ritualism. So the use of totems was
Hmm.
potentially proto-ritualistic. It's pretty interesting.
That's interesting because I was just looking up the rituals used to imbue a spirit into tiki masks,
Oh wow! Oh
which
wow! That's
are
cool.
like totem
Totemistic.
poles.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's animistic.
Yeah.
The whole worship there, you see it in Africa, in the Polynesian islands, in particular, and for it as far as tiki goes. Um, uh, New Zealand,
Mm,
Australia,
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Easter Island, also, down
Plenty,
there in the lower Pacific.
plenty of Easter eggs there.
Oh gosh. But the rituals used um in those items, the masks, the totems, or even in idols,
Hmm.
in the little statue idols that, I mean, have been found all over the world. I don't know if there is a continent there have not been idols found. Um, we I don't know. I think of Middle Eastern cultures when I think of the word idol. Uh, in that sense, a little statuette type
Yeah.
thing. The the teraphim, the household gods is what they were in Semitic uh, city states.
Hmm.
Those are the ones that Laban accuses Jacob and his wives
Hmm. Hmm.
of stealing from him his household teraphim, the household gods, goddesses, probably small-ish. I mean, I assume there were some big ones. We know there were idols like the idol of Dagon and
Yeah.
the idol of Saturn that were used as uh, abominations to defile um, places of worship for the Jews, and we know those were huge. Um, I get frustrated, and I know you and I, Rick, we've talked about it, but I get frustrated when Christians are like, I don't know why they would think there was anything special about a little carving of wood or metal. It couldn't do anything.
Maybe it's the same reason that they get angry when I suggest that angels take corporeal physical form by vibrating at particular
Vibrating.
resonances here on the planetary scale.
Yeah, right.
Find the
um,
internet and you'll find someone pissed off about something useless.
oh
So
my gosh, right.
you have
But
an
you know
opinion?
what?
I think that
I
opinion is stupid.
I have heard Christians though my whole life, uh, act like our forefathers were superstitious idiots who didn't know what two and two were. Um, and it like really it's offensive to me because um, Abraham wasn't an idiot. Uh, the Apostle Paul wasn't a superstitious moron. The disciples weren't a bunch of uneducated stupid fishermen. They were as educated as most of the people who reside on the planet today are. They have more education, more knowledge, have spent more time studying than most Americans with a college degree.
Frankly, to kind of step in here and echo your sentiment, but also kind of shed a little bit of light on it. I think a lot of it has to do with programming versus education, Michelle. I mean, education is
That's
one
good.
thing,
That's
but
good.
being programmed is a totally different thing. When you're programmed, you're going to think what you're taught to think. And when you're
True.
educated, you're going to try and figure stuff out for yourself. You're going to dig.
Yeah, when you're taught
You're welcome.
how to think critically and how to reason, then you will use those skills. If you were just taught to be obedient, then you're just going to learn the narrative and go with it. That is true. And as uh, one who was in Sunday school every Sunday, I know the answer. It's Jesus, the Bible, and God. And you, your chances of being right.
Be damned with all the rest, right?
Boys and girls, do you know why we're here today? Jesus. But I know we were taught so many, and I mean I was taught it. I was raised four square and Assemblies of God. Um and then non-denom when I was older, a teenager, already thinking for myself as well. Um
At least you had some
but
interaction with the Holy Spirit. We like
right.
we're like, oh, spiritual gifts. No, that those aren't a
Those
thing.
don't exist.
Yeah, we're done with that. Sorry, bud.
Good old Church of Christ, right? Church of God in Christ. Is that what it is
Church of Christ.
that you were raised? Church of Christ. Okay.
Church of Christ.
Um, but we were taught that the idols were empty, dead things, and I mean, predominantly they are, unless you go through one of these rituals and you open the mouth of the idol so that the god that it represents could enter it and um, grant your wishes or protect your household or make you fertile. Those were the common things, and it's interesting because it doesn't matter if it was a totem or if it was a mask of one of these elemental gods, or if it was um, an Asherah idol, um, or a little cow god. All of them could be empowered. Yeah, well, the power would be imbued to them through this ritual or this ceremony, and then the favor of that deity would be on the household.
Yeah. Oh.
And the belief was so strong that Laban was only kind of ticked off that Jacob took his two daughters, well, four daughters in total, actually, and his, um, grandchildren and his cattle. It wasn't his cattle; it was Jacob's cattle. But they were both so dishonest with each other. Um, that ticked him off. But when his household gods were missing, I think that was like the huge, huge deal. And we know that um, Rachel is the one who took them, and we know she sat upon them, which is a euphemism. But to be kid friendly, we'll just go with the she sat upon them. And so,
By the way, we haven't done so yet, but just for the sake of being kind and
yeah,
what's the word? Conscientious.
conscientious.
Yeah, we're going to be talking
But
about some heavy stuff today. I mean, it's
some of
not that we
the
don't always talk about
content,
heavy stuff, but yeah, it's not maybe not kid friendly. It's so funny. You were talking about something today, Shell. Oh, you were talking about what we're going to be talking about with the future episode about the body, and all of the body's actions and possibilities.
ugh,
And I was listening to it here on my phone, like while I was, because I just fixed my studio today, guys, as you can probably see, and you were talking about it, and my kiddo was right here setting up his
oh no.
my old computer, and I was like, and so I paused your message, and I go, hey, son, can you go grab my headphones real quick? And he didn't even notice, like he was like in his own world, but I
I'm
was like,
so glad.
maybe we just turn that off for a second. So anyway, yeah. So just a heads up, we're going to be talking about some adult topics in this episode. So
I mean, you know what? And they're in the Bible. I
yeah, they
was
are.
literally telling Ricky about what I had to read out loud. My husband and I don't know. I've said this before, so sorry if you've already heard it. My husband and I are reading the Bible together in a year. And so that means one of us or the other one of us, one or the other, I don't know, reads out loud. So we're not just reading the Bible, like at the same time silently reading the Bible out loud to each other. And Leviticus is an interesting book to read out loud, and I was telling Ricky that the other day I was going through um the
Missionary.
scriptures. Well, before that, it was the leprosy, and I was like, oh my gosh, really? And so I had read the leprosy chapter and was like, yes, that's done. Oh my gosh. And then it was like, and then the sacrifices for when you're cured of leprosy. Are you kidding me? Another like 50 verses of it. And then I was like, okay, we're done with that reading. Woof. And the next day I'm like, well, at least it's not leprosy. And then I open it up and it's bodily emission. And that is not a nice word.
Emission. Yeah.
But so yeah, we will be talking about that in a little bit.
Yes.
We won't get there yet
Which will
because
be
we're
a bit of a very, not a bit, it will be a fairly X-rated
it's
conversation.
it's going to be rather
It's
graphic. If you have
it's
older
graphic,
kids,
but
if
it's
you're willing to talk about it with your kids, have them in the room. But you're going to have if you have children listening to this episode today, you'll have questions afterwards.
yep.
They will have questions and you will have conversations
Yes.
and much awkwardness.
Yep.
So
Fun.
there's your warning.
You've been warned. Hide your kids, hide your wife.
So
Rachel.
the ritual of the opening of the mouths, um, these weren't just superstitious idiots. When Laban came after Jacob and his daughters, Laban's daughters, Jacob's wives, he really wanted to get back his property. He lost power
Oh,
in the theft of the teraphim, the household gods. And so we need to understand, because so many of us were taught in Sunday school that it's
are
so
taught.
silly. Are taught, right? Well, we that's true. Yeah, I'm not even a qualifier. That there's no power in there. Well, then why is God wasting his time? Let me tell you something. This is a rule you can live by, and it it's the rule that will go back to episode 1 and episode 2 and episode 3. We talked a lot about the shotgun over the mantle.
Right now
If
it's
the
just
shot
TW over the
right, the shotgun over the mantle.
mantle.
If there's a shotgun over the mantle and you see it at the beginning of your program, you can bet it's
Somebody's
going
gonna get shot by a gun.
to be right. That shotgun has uh, significance,
Serious implications.
and that is when God says don't do something, He doesn't tell you to do something that can't be done.
Right?
He doesn't tell you not to fly to the moon because you can't fly to the moon. I mean, maybe in a vehicle, but be that as it may.
That's
Uh,
a topic for a different episode.
right. Yeah. And we're not going there tonight. If he tells you, don't have any other God before me, and don't fashion for yourselves idols and worship them, which are the first two commandments,
Mhm.
first two, not one, two,
Yep.
then the implication is that there are other gods. And
Mhm.
the implication also is that playing with idols is going to get you in trouble because there's some power there. It's more than just a Barbie doll. It's more than just uh, a knickknack.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. So all that stemming from totemism, which was likely what came to be ritualism, which I don't know if I agree with necessarily, but it is entirely possible.
I mean, I can see it. You had the idol, the spirit needed to be imbued into the idol, the ritual of the mouth opening
Yeah.
did it. So it does make sense to me. I can see the
Well,
progression.
a lot of this in my mind is we have to kind of
Sorry, guys.
when it you can, when it comes to like totemism and stuff like that, and idol, the mouth opening ceremonies and stuff like that. It's important to, in my mind, it's important to separate post and pre-flood because we're talking about two very, very different circumstances. If that's the
Oh
case,
yeah.
right?
I
Because
wasn't even thinking pre-flood because
yeah,
pre-flood
it's all, but
the
this idea is very post-flood because it's way
the
more easy
gods
to
were
accept
walking
that there are
around
gods walking around on the earth, right? And so when you don't have
pre-flood.
as many gods walking around on the earth, and you don't have a whole lot of access to them anymore, and they don't look quite as towering as they probably once did, right? You know, you
Well, because the powerful ones are in chains of gloomy darkness at that point.
well, but even their offspring began. I mean, we've talked about this, right? And actually, that episode that you showed me or that you shared with me with the dudes from Haunted Cosmos and what's his face, how they were talking about how giants began to be more than likely more and more reduced
Became
in size
smaller,
and
smaller in
capability.
size.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Isn't that
yeah.
was good.
It was really good, and so that really got me thinking about like, well, yeah, these guys probably lost a lot of their capabilities. They became more confined to the physical limitations of their bodies and stuff like that, right? Right.
I have a Harry Potter thought.
Oh, okay. I'm all ears.
It's just the the pure bloods and the muggles and the mudbloods.
The mud bloods.
It's funny how these these things just resurge in popular
Lore.
lore. Good word, good word.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's very fascinating, and actually, we'll get into that because we see a lot of this stuff repeat over and over and over and over. Goodness, Shell, where should I start?
I don't
Um,
know, being as I derailed you with the
that's
talk
okay.
of the mouth opening,
Yeah,
so
it's all good.
ceremonies
So
and
I'm gonna.
rituals. So do you see a ritual as being more solemn? Because it
Yeah.
seems to me, because a ceremony, I mean, you have a graduation ceremony.
Mhm.
We have
It's usually
ceremonies, so
right.
many,
It
and
has
there,
a lot of
it's almost
celebration.
synonymous with celebration.
Right. I
Yeah.
actually heard somebody using that when I was looking at different definitions from different people. A lot of people were saying that that's precisely what it is, and from a more modern perspective, certainly an ancient perspective, I'm sure, but also, I think more palpable, more comprehensible for us is that a ceremony is more of a festive,
Don't bite
joyous,
my foot.
again corporal kind of uh, occasion, right? But I
Right.
mean, I don't know. I think
Well, and
maybe our language is just a little bit too convoluted with the two words nowadays because you can say, "Did you see how ceremoniously he walked down the aisle?" And you mean that he looked like he was in some sort of ritual. You don't actually mean that he was in some sort of ceremony. But you know, six of one, half a dozen of the other.
right,
But
and
there's a
I was gonna
difference.
say you can perform a ritual by yourself, but people would also perform the ceremony of Harry Carey
Well,
by
let me think.
themselves,
Can we?
so
Oh well, yeah, yeah. It's difficult to know.
there is a lot of bleed over in the two,
Understandably, right? I mean,
yeah, the two
they
terms.
you can't really. A lot of times you don't really have one without the other. Like it's very rare to, right? Like for example, I remember very clearly that my um, one of my lovely teachers back in university, Dr. Lei, love her to death. She was great. One of my Chinese East Asian Studies professors talked at, she made tons of references over and over and over to the ceremonious actions of the Chinese court, and really compared it to the Western court today, and actually very funny that we're going down this path. I was not even thinking about this, but I don't know if you guys know this, but like the robes, like the dark robes that justices wear, like even here in the States, and frankly, probably those that are worn in other Western countries like the UK and stuff like that. That whole robe, ceremonial dress and garb type thing comes from Chinese court. Like that's where that actually comes from.
Huh.
The Chinese would dress with these long, very long and decorated ceremonious robes, and that's how they would conduct business. I mean, quite literally. And there's tons of ritual if you've ever
Oh my gosh,
read
right.
anything about Chinese court, there's tons of ritual, and the same thing is true in our courts, right? Although nowadays I don't know how much ritual and ceremonious actions and judges we have on our federal courts, which is kind of bizarre, but that's neither here nor there. God bless them. God bless them. So, anyway, good question. Good question. It's hard to distinguish one from the other, but I mean, I think that there is, although there's bleed over. If you look at a Venn diagram, there are some outliers, right? It's not 100% overlap.
Right.
That being said, I guess we will start with geez, I'm just like, where do I even start?
There's so very
I guess
much.
we'll do alignments and times. I'm just going to kind of throw those together because they feed off each other really, really well. Even, I would say, even more so than rituals and ceremonies, because
You
need
know
the
what?
time and the
But
place, right?
before you go there,
Yeah, go for it.
I wanted to bring up consecration
Okay, go for it.
because in
Oh, I actually have something to say about that.
in all of, I don't even know how to order my thoughts
In
here.
every type of religious activity, I guess is what you're saying.
Well, in any place that is made holy, whether it's for a season or permanence, there's a consecration ritual that happens. Almost all of them involve blood, and every single one of them involves will. And what I mean by that, it, the definition of consecrate does a good job of explaining what I mean, and it is to make or declare something or some place sacred, to dedicate formally to a religious or divine purpose. There's a will there. When the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, when God gave the dimensions, and oh man, it's a lot of scripture to read about those dimensions. They're very specific, down to what the hooks were made out of. Um, there was a formality and a ritual to the design of everything, what it was made from, how it was made, who made it, why it is being made. And it was the will of God that the tabernacle become sacred. Um, and so the consecration, he had already decided this is going to be sacred. Now Moses, tell Aaron, and Aaron, you tell the artisans and your sons what they need to do in order to fulfill my will, that this place be consecrated and be made holy, be
That's
made
good.
sacred. So it everything was very specific. And I was thinking, what is the thing that is in common of every quote unquote holy site or
Sacred,
site
sacred.
of power? Yeah, every sacred place. Um, and what I think is in common, other than the will for the place to become sacred, is that there is blood used to consecrate
Yep.
the place.
Which is
You name a place, Gobekli
Tepe,
Tepe, um,
Tepe
Machu
Terra,
Picchu,
Picchu.
uh, like you name the spot, you name it, the Temple Mount. Uh, it's all consecrated with blood, human blood, goat blood,
It,
whatever blood.
it's propitiatory, which is I think the word that we're looking for here, right? There has to be some sort of propitiatory sacrifice for sanctification. And what's the word? Consecration. I like that word better. Um,
Right,
it's even echoed in our modern sentiment when we say that freedom's not free. You know,
right. No,
um,
what is the saying? The tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of
yeah,
patriots
that's
from
right.
time to time.
That's right. That's right. And maybe we'll live in those times real soon. I don't know. Um, I know some countries are, as a matter of fact, at the moment.
Right,
Um,
right now.
right this second. So, yeah, that's good. Did I interrupt? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
No, you were good. And it is propitiation.
Appreciation.
Propitiation.
Propitiation.
Oh
I
my goodness.
appreciation your propitiation. Um,
Right.
uh,
No,
that's
that was the two big things for consecration. Will, divine will
right.
specifically, and
Somewhat
blood.
divine will. Jeez. Um,
Right.
and that
Well,
somewhat
we'll
could be
we'll
many
still
people.
go with divine, meaning greater than
Yeah. That's.
plain old regular
I'm
human,
agreeing with you
but
absolutely.
not necessarily God's will.
Pithy mortal. Um, I it's good that you mentioned that, and I want to before I move on to some other, or maybe actually I will move there. I'm going to move on to those consecration points, and then I'm going to circle back and make my comment. There are several uh, consecration rituals that we kind of looked at, or I guess we'll call them pre-ritual. We got to get our pre-ritual warm-up going here, and so that's what we call
God.
consecration. Um, so yeah. Don't do the yoga. No, not the yoga. Um, so I was actually reading. I read things so you don't have to. I was reading a Wiccan spell book for high priest and priestesses, and what I found very interesting was something that Shelley actually mentioned that I had not really caught right away, and I went, oh, that's absolutely right. Are these pre-ceremonial, pre-ritualistic um, rituals or yeah, I guess they're preparation rituals. That's really what they are. Um, so, like for example, in Wiccan practice, what they'll do is they'll have a theme. Is that how you call it? A theme. I don't know what the name of the
An
blade is.
athame,
It's that's how it's spelled. A theme. You guys can correct me if
an
I'm wrong if you know.
athame.
Athame, a theme. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a blade. It's a ceremonial blade, is what it is. And what they'll do is they will cut out a circle or a pentagram or whatever, and that is what they call cutting the astral. And Shell didn't even miss a bit. She goes, "Oh yeah, like you need blood for everything." And I went, "Oh wow, that's usually a blade that's used for physical, um, sacrifice. But I wouldn't put it past doing a spiritual um, cutting as being all that much different. Honestly, it can also be used for sealing. So they do the opposite, right? They'll go the opposite ways. And it was very interesting to kind of read these rituals. I was like, that's very curious.
And
Um,
Athame.
we lost you. What was that?
Sorry, and Athame looks like is the proper.
Okay.
I've read the word hundreds of times, but I have not really heard somebody say it out
Well,
loud.
I learned all these very old English and old Celtic words on this for this podcast. I was like, oh, I don't know what that is. Diosol, Widdershins,
Ichthyos.
yeah, all sorts of weird stuff. Anyway, um,
Is that having to do with fish? Because
which one? Widdershins?
no, ichthyosol.
Ichthyos. I don't know that one.
Oh, I don't know. I thought you just said ichthyosol, and
No.
I know an
Widdershins and Diosol. Diosol. Diosol means clockwise, and Widdershins means counterclockwise. Widdershins sounds like a
counterclockwise.
fake swear word, honestly. Widdershins.
Winter, that's Germanic. No, that's a German word.
That's true. That's true. That is right from German. And there's all sorts of. It seems like there's a lot of these like sort of, and they'll call them initiation ceremonies. There's some that are invocation, so they'll set the quarters, like they'll actually mark out the space, so to speak, with their athame. I hope I'm saying that right. And all that kind of stuff. So that is interesting that's like a pre-ritualistic thing. There was also something that I was reading about called geomancy. You guys may know that word, you may not. Geomancy just refers to what you would probably. We talked about this last episode as well.
Like ley lines, lines of power.
Feng shui.
Telluric lines.
Telluric lines as well. Feng shui is wind and water. If you say it fancy like you're supposed to, it's feng shui. And I was so pissed off that we did this whole thing about mountains, and I totally abandoned this, but it's super relevant because it actually does play into alignment. So I'm going to read it. It's pretty short. So we were talking about Taoism and everything, playing a big role in, the sacredness of mountains and the solidarity, solitariness. Is that a word? Solitude.
The solitude.
Good job, Ricky. Good words.
Solitudinous.
The solitariness. The solitude of the Taoist, right? And so I'm just going to read it straight off. It's super relevant and interesting. The Chinese Taoist philosophy directly emanates from the play of these polarities and talking about light and dark, and finds expression in the 5 great mountains, supposedly created from the limbs and head of Pangu. Pangu, which is the creator god. However, unlike Meru, which is the other mountain we talk about, blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, I'll read the rest. Okay. Unlike Meru, which is another sacred mountain, this sacred mountain exists in the natural Chinese landscape, not just in temples and sculpture. They also correspond to the 4 cardinal directions, east being prominent to the head of Pangu, and include a central mountain following the tradition of Chinese geomancy, feng shui. Taishan. Oh, wow, that's great. They named the mountains. Sorry, just reading through it real quick. And this is super relevant as well. Feng shui is a form of Chinese geomancy, which we just mentioned, geographical divination, that analyzes the location, form, and orientation of a building or monument relative to the topography of the surrounding landscape. Buildings that utilize the natural elements of land and tap into energy are auspicious places to live, work, or bury dead, which we mentioned. Places that are antagonistic to these energies are unlucky, which you might guess, right? The opposite of lucky. But what was fascinating to me is that with regard to initiation, the reason I'm bringing it up here, one is because I didn't get to last episode. No, I'm kidding. I'm bringing it up because
all those sacred mountains, you blew it.
I know, dang it. It's very interesting because in a particular book I was reading, I'll have to look up the name. Let me see if I have it on hand while I'm talking here. It was really interesting that they were talking about in this book about geomancy called Geomancy and Ancient Astrology. A Guide to Something or Other. It's a book by, what's this lady's name? Sorry, guys. Her name is Mira Steva, it looks like. And it was pretty informative, pretty basic, but it was informative. And what was super fascinating to me is that they would literally take like, she was talking about taking sand or some sort of something you could just scatter on the ground, and you could practice essentially feng shui with it. So you would like pre-ritualistically or ritualistically, I don't know which is one or the other. It seems like an initiation kind of action to me. Find out where the land is appropriate for setting your building structures. I was like, wow, that's a lot like, what did you say, dowsing, right? That's what it's called?
Yeah, dowsing, where you divine the locations of water, um, sometimes like gold or gemstones or
Yeah.
oil, precious stuff under the ground, I guess,
Yep. So
by
anyway,
using, earth vibrations.
correct. So there's lots of that going on. So now you guys kind of understand about geomancy. Do you want to touch anything else on this kind of consecration type thing, Shell, before we move on?
Um, no, it's interesting how I say no, and then I go
That's
on and
the most Hispanic thing you can ever do, and they always, every time I'm interpreting, they'll say, "Do you have any more questions?" And so I'll look at the Spanish speaker and I go, "¿Tiene alguna otra pregunta? Do you have any other questions?" And they go, "No, solamente blah 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 blah." No, they go, "No, blah, blah." I'm like, just say yes. I have more questions. Like, it's okay, you know. So funny.
oh gosh, I know. I'm very much that way. So, um,
I forgive you. You've lived in El Paso for a long time.
I have. Um, the when God, I'm going to go back to the tabernacle, and then again to the temple, when God gave the dimensions and He gave the directions, and man, there's a lot of directions. Um, like when you read them out loud, I'm like, dude, they had to have written those down, because I've got to go back and look at that again, because I've got to look at that again. It's got to be how many what how many cubits?
Right?
Um, God is so specific, and he tells them, make sure you get all of this right,
Mm-hmm.
because it was built on something else. These blueprints that God gave were based on the throne in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just oh, I want it to be a 2-to-1 ratio
Yeah.
type thing, because then he could have just said, do it as a 2-to-1 ratio, have your door facing the east, which actually he did all of that too. Exactly,
Yeah.
where it was the entrance is supposed to be. And then
Yeah.
when he would talk about um this wall, and it's going to be the eastern, it wasn't even a wall, it's a curtain, because it's a curtain. It's a thick, very thick curtains, but I mean, it's a tent, the tent of meeting. That's what the tabernacle was.
Yeah.
But then even at the temple, like everything has to be exactly
Exactly.
perfect. And um there are so many Native Americans who the door has to face north, or the door has to face the opening has to face this way, and these things have to be this
Yeah.
way, and
Yeah.
and it's not just the Chinese and
No. No, it's
feng
certainly not.
shui. um
Feng shui.
um
You could say feng shui
who
if you want.
No, dum-dum. Who have to follow everything so precisely, the measurements
Right.
precisely. I know my kitty cat needs some love, I guess, until he decides to bite me. He's already bitten my feet twice since we have been recording.
Jeez, jerk face.
He is. So he's black and white, which means that he is bipolar.
There
My
you
cat
go.
is very bipolar.
He's,
That's what they say about tuxedo cats, which is the kind of cat he is,
oh,
is
that's
that they're
funny.
bipolar, and he
Tuxedo.
definitely
That's so funny.
he
It'd be funny if
he
he had a little black,
fits.
had a little black
Right.
tuxedo.
Well, because he's
Yeah,
black and white. That's why they're
yeah.
tuxedo cats. But
That's funny.
just there must be something to that.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. It's funny. I literally had forgotten to mention, and I'll just mention it really quickly. But there's something in ancient Hindu and I think it's Buddhist and Hindu practice, but certainly Hindu, called Shastra, which is essentially the guiding principle for constructing mandalas. Like they map everything out, and it has to correspond precisely on the mandala for it to work properly, which
Well, and
is
there's so much math in that.
yeah, it is, and it's
Well,
all about
and then
concentric circles and all that stuff. So
and then their
circles.
man geometry. We can't even go there
We're just gonna have to
tonight.
do an episode on sacred geometry at some point. Like
Like
that's
for
just gonna have to
real,
be a
for
thing.
real.
Uh, oh,
God's math.
you were talking about Native Americans. That's where I was gonna go actually. They
Well, there you
use
go.
geomancy to find out proper hunting grounds, to predict the future for their living spaces, just like you said. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. I was like, whoa, that's very cool. Not unlike many other cultures, frankly. Geomancy's been used in all sorts of stuff. There's astrological geomancy, which is basically this was really cool. Um, this is my thought. Um, so they, it's very funny to me. The common watcher uh, parroted phrase is that they created us, right? That we are their creation. We were created. I mean, that was very Anunnaki type thing that,
Right.
that has kind of been handed down since time immemorial, right? And that's like circling the internet all over the place right now. Oh, the Anunnaki said that we were created by them, and that we were the slaves, and that they needed us to do the menial work and blah blah blah, right? Well, it's funny because I always go back to what we were talking about when we were off air still, Shell, about how you can't avoid seeing what the watchers try to do all the time, like
Oh
how they
yeah.
try
Yeah,
to
yeah.
infiltrate it. Well, I
I
got thinking,
cannot
and
I cannot watch a
you
show,
can't watch
any
this
any
stuff,
show, any movie,
yeah, and
nothing
not see
without
their
seeing it.
hands all grubby up in it, right? It
Yep.
was super interesting to me because you, they they say they say in astrological geomancy that your fate is. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it. Your fate is written in the stars, right? Well, who are
Right.
the stars in ancient culture? The stars are the
Oh, that's
gods,
right. The gods.
and
Yeah.
then they also say in the modern era, right, that we're nothing but star stuff.
Oh yeah.
So if we're their creation, then we're just star stuff. And I was like, these guys are
Man, they have
maniacal,
really tried to
maniacal.
usurp
It's
God's
crazy.
place.
Um,
Oof.
yeah, so I thought that was
And
really
and
fascinating.
they're in such a long game because what we can do, and I mean we do this all the time in our episodes. We point to this commonality in this society and this culture and that culture and the other one, and they supposedly never had any kind of contact with one another. And you see this because those those B'nai Elohim, those watchers, the fallen in particular,
Yeah,
um, sons of God, they have this long game, and
totally.
And they have seeded like the entire planet
It's crazy.
with the I don't know, the seeds
Yeah.
of these thoughts to where I mean the ancient aliens well of course it was bound to come up once we had um mass communications like
Yeah.
the internet
Yep.
or worldwide television,
Yeah. Yeah.
stations that broadcast in every nation. Um, because that's what they had done. They put it there so that at the time when it comes for them to make that withdrawal, it has collected a lot of interest in the accounts of
Yeah.
us, in
Yeah.
our
Yeah. Yeah.
accounts,
Well, I mean,
so that it will be there for them to draw, and we're just going to be like, oh yeah, okay, there
that's
you go.
that's the long game show with what we've talked about, the Great Deception, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's I mean, like that's Marzulli's whole shtick, right? Like he's like, dude,
Yep.
they're gonna fool you. And actually, the haunted
Like,
cosmos dudes said something that I have thought, I think about all the time, and I've said it a million times, and they said it in a different context, and I was like, yes, that's exactly right. And what that was is, we watch what these guys do. We see their machinations and their workings, right, and their schemes. But how much do we trust what we see? They are hell bent on deception, and so
less and less
let's
and less. I am, man, it's getting so hard. I'm afraid to trust my own eyes
yeah,
if it's on um, a device.
yeah,
If
oh
what
yeah,
I am watching is not a live person in front of me,
yeah,
I can't be 100% certain that what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing is what actually was said.
yep, 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 yep. Yeah,
That
it's
is
crazy, right?
so awful to me. Like, talk about the great deception. Just the fact that we can't trust AI, the
Yeah,
stuff AI puts out is so legitimately
convincing.
believable.
Yeah, I mean, and there's still stuff that we can pick apart, but it's getting harder all the time, and it's not far off, man. I mean, it's really
Like,
not.
this is when you truly we have to pray for discernment and we have
Yeah,
to rely on
yeah,
the Holy Spirit
yeah, man, absolutely.
more than ever, because when that great deception comes, man, the word says
Boy,
if it's possible, even the very elect will be
and that's the
deceived.
verse that
Oh,
always echoes in my mind, seriously, whenever I think about this stuff, because it's so we like to think that we're prepared, and I think that on some level we are, but I mean, I don't think anything's going to prepare us. I was just talking to my wife today, or yesterday, it was one of the two, and I was like, hey, I really want to talk to you about something, but I'm not sure if I want to talk to you about it. And she goes, oh, is it about aliens? And I was like, actually, it has nothing to do with weird alien stuff. Like, I wasn't even going to mention anything weird. Like, it's kind of a personal thing. And she was like, oh, okay. And I literally, I turned around and looked at her. I'm like, all right, when these dudes show up and they start
right.
telling you stuff like, we made you guys and you guys were seeded by us and we are your creators and we've come back to reign and rule justly and help you guys reach godhood.
Your next
remember
level of ascension.
remember these stupid conversations that you think that I have all the time, like they're relevant. So anyway
So my poor
anyway
kids are the same way.
I
They're
know,
just like, "Are you kidding?" My husband, bless his heart, he is real good about
oh,
listening
your husband's
to
great. I love Danny.
these things.
He's
He's
awesome.
the best. But he'll
He's like,
just be
all
like,
right, we'll listen to
"Oh, okay," and
it.
then
um
okay, okay.
all right, all right, all right, all right. I made notes and then I didn't follow them. Freaking ridiculous. Um,
I made no
so
notes and I am not following them.
I think
Well, I mean, that's
you're
not true, but I
you're
didn't make great notes this time
you're doing well.
at
Don't worry
all.
about it. So I guess there's a few things here and there that I want to talk about. There are all sorts of times that are relevant for when rituals and when ceremonies take place, and those obviously involve places as well, which is why we're kind of tag teaming with times and places, and alignment. Excuse me. One of the things that I want to talk about, and we'll get to Halloween or Samhain in just a second here, which is really what this episode was kind of inspired for. We were going to talk about this stuff anyway, but it just seemed, it was appropriate. We're like, okay, Halloween is
time.
When this drops, this will drop. I'm going to try and drop this for our patrons and our Spotifyers on Saturday. And then for everybody else, it's going to drop on Monday. I want this to be out so people are thinking about it, they're watching it, and they're seeing what's going on.
So October 21st. So the week, we're giving you a little bit more than a week before Halloween. Yep. All Hallows Eve, Samhain, the Day of the Dead.
The Reformation Day.
Reformation Day. That one's weird to me.
I know, it is super weird.
That is not how I'm celebrating this. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, given good old Mr. Luther's position, I'm like, I don't know how much we reformed for the good.
Yeah.
There were some good things in the Reformation. I'm not saying there weren't, but
definitely there were. We had progress, but God also used a jackass to speak to Balaam. So just saying.
Yeah. And it's also my mother-in-law's birthday, so there's that.
Oh, yay!
Yeah. It's so funny. Whenever we used to. By the way, guys, we're not. I don't know about you guys. Well, we'll get there in a little bit. I'll talk about Samhain in a little bit, but there are a few things that I thought were interesting about alignments. Obviously, astrology is all about alignments. Frankly, that's all it is. It's all the planets. It's all the alignment.
Cosmic alignment.
Exactly. We were talking about, or I was mentioning lunar nodes. I thought this was fascinating. So lunar nodes are essentially where the moon. I'm not going to explain this very well, but you guys can look it up. I'm going to do my best. When the moon aligns at its proper times, and I think it has to do with the equinox and the solstice, like where it is relative to the sun. At one point it's in darkness, and at the other point it's in light, right? Well, that has to do, when it comes to astrology, with karmic destiny. And if I remember right, if it's in the light, that's the you'll love this show. That's the dragon's head, and if it's in the dark, that's the dragon's tail.
The dragon's tail.
And what do we think the dragon's head is for? The dragon's head is for future potential, which is divination, and the tail is for experience, what we've already been through. So that puts things into perspective for you.
The dragon's head is for devouring you.
That's also very true.
Man, roaring lion. They could have used.
Yeah.
Voracious dragon.
Well, the sun, and this is great. I was actually looking up at the signs, right? So the sun is, it's Hallel all up in this bad boy. Life giver, creative, vital, willpower, source of all life and ego, and he is a Leo as well. So there's that, and he's golden. He's golden as well. I just thought I threw that bad boy in there. Yeah, I thought that was super fascinating. I won't bore you guys to death with that stuff, but you guys kind of get the idea. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything as far as times and rituals go, so we don't miss anything. And I haven't even gotten to ancient Mesopotamia, but I'll kind of touch on that a little bit. But I do want to mention Gilgal Rephaim. I think that's super cool, super relevant.
That's in Turkey, right?
I believe it is. No, I think it used to be. I think that's in Israel, actually. I think so. Don't quote me on it, but I was just watching something about it, and I'm pretty sure it's in like what was previously not Israeli territory. I'm not.
The Golan. It's located in the Israeli occupied portion of the Golan Heights, Which I mean, it's right there. It's
It's crazy.
borderland.
The dude's video that I watched that he was out there, they were the only ones there for hours. No one was there. I was like,
Really?
didn't make it onto the Christian landscape, huh? Didn't seem important enough. All right, cool deal. So that's Gilgal Rephaim, just for reference, guys, is the wheel of the giants, and
That
actually,
thing is
it's very impressive.
real crazy. Yeah.
Let me see if I can pull it up here, because it is very impressive, and it's believed to be a calendar essentially, because everything that it lines up with is just it's all astronomical. Let's see here. What's a good pick? This is a pretty decent picture.
Rujum El Hiri.
Let's see. What's that show?
It's also called Rujum or Rojim El Hiri.
Oh. Where's that? You know where that's from?
That's the Arabic.
Oh, okay, cool. I was wondering if that's.
But it's Gilgal Rephaim in Hebrew.
Okay, hold on one second. Yes, you're allowed to do that. Firefox. I got a brand new computer, guys, and so like it's like, is it okay if we record this? Is that all right? And I'm like, yes, it's fine. You can do that.
Made up of more than 42,000 basalt rocks arranged in concentric circles. It has a mound 15 feet tall at its center. Some circles are complete, others are incomplete. The outermost wall is 520 feet in diameter.
That's crazy,
and
man.
8 feet high.
Hey, will you do me a favor, Shell? It's gonna kick me out if I have to reset it for it to work properly. Can you share a picture of
yeah, let me get a better one than this one. Let me.
Yeah, you're good.
Go to Google and get it.
Something that was really, really interesting in the guy's video that I was watching, who was there a few years ago, said that a lot of people actually have made reference to the fact that Gilgal looks a lot like Atlantis with its concentric circles.
Right.
And I was like, ooh, that's we're getting there, guys. We're gonna get to our Atlantis episode soon enough. Just a lot of reading. And I wanted to mention the fact that I know this is a little off topic, but it seems like a really cool idea to me, and it makes a lot of sense to me. So these megalithic structures are megalithic. They're gigantic, obviously, right? So I believe that the reason that the stones are so large is because they're better conductors for whatever you're trying to do, whether that be sound vibration, whether that be imbuing spiritual power into objects, whatever you're trying to accomplish. There you go. Look at that bad boy.
Sorry, I couldn't.
No.
Nope. Let me see if I can make it.
There you go. That's a little bit better. That's not bad. So this little, oh, nobody can see my mouse because it's you. So the center part there, it looks small, but it is a massive structure. I mean, even in
I think somewhere they show people. Let me find that one.
So that centerpiece that you guys are looking at there is a type of dolmen, and a dolmen is essentially it's a portal tomb, is what that is. You can fill in the blank for whatever that means exactly. I don't have all the information around it, but I found out about that because I was actually doing some Samhain or Halloween research, and there's dolmens that are important on Halloween as well, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. But yes, they are called portal tombs. I was like, wow, that's a thing.
Oh yeah, dolmen.
So, and the reason that I wanted to mention this Gilgal Rephaim really was.
Oh, this is interesting. Look, there are people. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Let's see.
There are people like on some of the stones.
Yeah, they were walking around the stones in this video, and I was like, man, that thing is huge. I didn't realize how big it was. You guys have to remember that this is like a destroyed structure, like it's annihilated basically. So it doesn't look like what it would have looked like. And yeah, look at that. That's like on one of the inner circles.
Let's
That's
see
one of the
if this will
small
come up
ones that you're
better.
looking at. It's crazy. It's fascinating, man. Megaliths are so interesting. They are so
That's
fascinating.
Stonehenge, dude.
Where's I can't see Stonehenge.
Oh,
Stonehenge.
let me see, which one am I? Oh, because it popped open another.
Oh, and by the way, since we're on that, I know this is back to megaliths, which we love to talk about. Apparently, there is a serpent mound not that far away from Gilgal Rephaim, very similar to the serpent mound, if not identical to the serpent mound in Ohio, which is really crazy. If you guys haven't seen that serpent mound, you can either go back and watch the megalithic episode, or you can find it online, man. It's very cool. Just look up Ohio serpent mound, and you'll be able to find it real easy. Or you can go in.
Okay, I'm going to scroll through on this one because it's very interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna grab some water. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then what you can't see, though, is that there are people on there. Can we?
Oh, you sure can. You can barely make them out, but man, that's wild. That is wild. Yeah, that's inside that dolmen there. He said it was really small and constricted. I'm assuming that a lot of it collapsed. Look at that.
Probably.
That's
This
crazy.
is Stonehenge, though. This is not. Look at all the people inside of Stonehenge, though.
Not surprised.
But very,
very cool.
Very cool. Super crazy.
See if I'm missing anything else here. Oh, I just was going to mention that, and I can kind of mention it later, but I thought it was really interesting that there are certain days that certain remedies are made. That you have to wait till certain days to actually make certain remedies and potions and stuff like that. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And that really comes straight out of Mesopotamian lore, as far as I can tell, Mesopotamian religion, honestly.
It's possible. You know how you were talking about days? I was watching an interesting video put out by, I think, Answers in Genesis. They were talking about should Christians celebrate Halloween, whatever. And
Halloween.
they were doing exactly the same thing that we are doing, making all the connections, because it's kind of hard not to make the connections if you at all look. But they were talking about the Day of the Dead and the days that venerate the dead around the world.
Yeah.
And they made the statement that this goes back, celebration or the commemoration of the dead goes back to the sacrifice that Noah made after disembarking from the ark. Arking, yeah. Sorry, it was there. It's late. It's real late. It's always real late when we record. I don't know, other than the time we had Kelsey on, I don't think we have recorded in daylight.
Who needs daylight?
Because we both work and we do this at night when we're both off work and have made the time for the recording sessions. Oh gosh.
A little bit of Billy Corgan, sorry.
The thing that
What was I going to look
that
up?
was interesting is that
Oh, I remember.
not Moses, Noah's sacrifice, that was after gosh, I don't even know how to put this into words, the most deaths ever. So in like before the flood, yeah, there are only a few 100,000 or maybe a few thousand people who had died. There weren't a whole lot of,
Mm-hmm.
the ancestors who had gone on before, but not a whole lot of dead to venerate. But after the flood, 99.99999% of the population was destroyed. All of a sudden, there's a lot of dead to possibly appease.
Hmm.
And you know what? And I don't think that we are in any kind of peril of the dead coming back to haunt us or steal our sweets or cause mischief or whatever. Um, Although, I mean, I can't say 100% that there's not a possibility.
Hauntings seem to be
My own
possible.
personal experience has been not a big deal. I don't feel a need to go and carve a jack-o'-lantern and put a mask on my kids to keep um, dead ancestors from coming back and causing mischief.
Yeah.
So, but it is interesting that every culture venerates their decedents.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess since we're on our way there, we might as well just hop right over to Samhain, to Halloween, that is.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I guess in my brain I was already there.
no, that's fine.
Um,
That's totally fine. There's actually I watched a really really informative video by a witch who celebrates Samhain, and it was
it's
very enlightening.
very hard to find anything about Samhain that is not put out by
And
a pagan or a Wiccan
yeah,
or practicing witch of some sort. It's very difficult.
yeah, yeah. There is a quick well, I guess since we're on the topic of times and alignments and all that good stuff, she was talking specifically about the fact that this is the best time because um oh my gosh, guys, come on, let me just load my stuff. Yes, I allow all of them. You can do all of it. It's wonderful. Fine.
Yes, I read everything and I agreed to it wholeheartedly
Yes, of
because we have
course.
zero choice at all.
Right. So she talks about how the veil is thinnest on Samhain in I don't know if in any time, at all. I'm not really sure, but it is interesting because she made reference as a pagan, saying that, and as a witch specifically, that it's the actual real beginning of the new year. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. I guess that is according to whoever you're asking, right? But Samhain really just means November. That's all it means. Um, but it's Samhain emblem, which means reclaiming. Okay, which I think has to do with spring. Um, what was super interesting is that it is very specific as to when um, Halloween or Samhain or this veil compromise, I guess we'll call it, takes place. It's specifically on October 31st at dusk is when it actually begins. And it runs all the way through November 1st until dusk. Now, it's most potent right at midnight, which would probably stand to make a lot of sense. At that threshold at midnight, that's where I think in all cultures in general, I mean, even in Hebraic and Christian culture, like, we know that there is an end of a cycle and there's a beginning of a cycle. So it's not weird that would be the case, right? But there was some interesting stuff that she talked about that typically on Samhain, as traditionally was done, there would be a big bonfire, right? And preferably at the top of a hill. And in old lore, it was if you went up to the top of the hill and you were near the bonfire and you didn't burn, then you weren't a witch, which kind of makes sense. But
right,
it was
day late, dollar short.
That's right. And it was very interesting to me that the old tradition of Samhain was literally at this bonfire to light a torch and take that torch to your home and light your fire in your house with that torch. I thought that was very curious. It's not necessarily super necessary or anything relevant here, but it is definitely part of the ritual itself. This is also a crossover of the seasons, and I've been trying to friggin' share this bloody image, but it doesn't seem to want to let me. I'm going to try one more time. Let's see if it'll let me do it this time. Allow. Can you see that? I'm hoping this is recording.
I can see it.
If not, I'll just edit it back in. It's all good. This is what I want you guys to see. So
perfect. Nope, we've got it. That's great.
Okay, cool. So right here is Samhain. Okay, and it's super relevant because if you notice, it literally is right between October and November. And I was looking at all these other ones: Yule, which is December, Imbolc, which
right.
is
That's what the Yule log, Yuletide.
Yep.
That is all the old. Yeah, we bring it over to talk about Christmas, but
Yep.
Litha, Midsummer.
Mm-hmm. Beltane, which is right around
May Day.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
May Day, May 1st.
Exactly Astara. Right. Sound like anything familiar?
Mrs. Ishtar.
Yep.
So yeah, I thought this was
Notice
really
there's a bunny there.
Oops, sorry, I got rid of it.
Dude, that's actually a really, really good visual.
Yeah, it was. She was the one that actually showed that. Here, let me pull it back up.
That shows so much of the pagan roots of the holidays.
Sorry guys, I took it off. I'm gonna pull it back up here in just a second.
You want to hear something else interesting?
Do it. There you go. You can see it real quick.
So the day that Noah's family entered the ark, just 47 days after the death of Methuselah, because remember, his death was the catalyst.
It's a signifier, right?
So it was Wednesday, October 30th, which was Heshvan 10 in 2458 BC.
Where did you get
That's
that?
just, it's interesting. The day that they all went on the ark is October 30th. I imagine some of the taller creatures may have taken a day or two to be
dead,
submerged.
Completely.
Yeah.
That's
wow.
Crazy.
That is interesting. I was very curious because that's what they had been intimating that the Day of the Dead has to do with the diluvian flood.
That's crazy.
That's very interesting. I'm just.
Holy crap, that's crazy. And wow, geez, wow, I'm kind of dumbfounded. That's very interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. Makes all of the other stuff I was going to say seem sort of like, oh, that's great.
Well, you wonder if there's some, okay, maybe there is some power,
Yeah,
but
well,
then where does it really
and
come from, you
and then
know?
and then the important part too, right, is that not only is this Day of the Dead theme relevant, right, and not only is this crossover or bleed over, I guess what we'll call it, this thinning of the veil, but it's interesting to me that Samhain is one of the best days, or is the best day in the year for a plethora of things. Um, Divining your future, divining the death of those in your community, which lends itself very clearly to what you just said.
Right.
Um,
Who the heck wants that? Ew.
Allows you to commune with spirits. Check this out. This was so funny. That witch, when she was talking about this show, and she goes over all these rituals, right? There's one about um, scrying into a mirror. Scrying, guys, is like
Mm.
divining, but using like some
It's
sort of
it's
a
something shiny,
medium.
either
Yeah,
water, or a mirror,
yeah.
or
Some
a
sort of
silver platter,
crystalline type structure that allows you to kind of
just
s-
to
space out. I don't know how else to say it. You know,
see
kind of.
something
Yeah.
else, to remote
Um,
view.
Remote view. That's exactly what it is. It's remote viewing. It's old school remote viewing. That's what it is.
It still also is what God says don't do. So,
Correct.
so
Don't
I'm just
divine.
saying.
But it's interesting because that's when people obviously you imagine that that's when they commune with the spirits, but not just spirits of like the gods or demons or whatever you want to call them, right? Also, one of the normal things that would happen is that if you would stand on your porch or you would stand near a crossroads, you would see, you would divine the people that were going to die in your community because they would walk past you. You would see their phantom walk past you. I thought that was really crazy. Um, Also, another thing, and this is a super common thing, and I wanted to mention it because it's really fascinating to me, and I think it really kind of actually ties directly into the mouth opening ceremony. Every culture seems to, around this time, right around Samhain, right around the 31st of October, always wants to leave food for the dead, or maybe
To
just
appease the
the
dead
other
or
side in general,
ancestors.
right? I mean, either one. These are all kind of ideas about what happens, but again, uh, the 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 dark ones are masters of deception. That is their MO,
Right.
right? So um, part of one of the rituals in Samhain, if you're a Wiccan, or I'm assuming just a Wiccan or a witch in general, that you're supposed to have your ceremony, whatever your ceremony is, and after that ceremony, particularly in this Wiccan book that I read, this Wiccan book of rituals and spells and stuff, you have to set aside of your portion for your ancestors. And get this, this is the craziest part to me. In that book, I know most people are like, okay, Ricky, I don't get it. The word for ancestors in that book is capitalized. That refers to a deity. That refers to
Hmm.
an object of worship. You don't place in English that kind of importance on something unless that's the way it's viewed.
Right.
Um, I mean, it's sort of like it's the same thing as you guys might get tired of me hearing me say this kind of stuff, but to me, language is the lens through which you can view anthropology properly. So when you have an anthropological situation and then you add language to it, language will tell you very much in that culture what was valued in on top of what you can already find as an archaeological piece of evidence or whatever. That writing will lend itself very specifically in the grammar, in the structure, in the implications, in the inferences, in all those things really show up. So I thought that was really interesting. It's a time where fairies come out, but fairies are not nice. Um, and get this is crazy to me. So you have to leave out on Samhain. You're supposed to leave out for bad spirits, so they won't hate you or try and or for your ancestors as well, right? You leave out nuts. You can leave out what is it? Nuts. Um, Good night. I wrote it down. Well, one of the ones that I thought was interesting was the apple. an apple is considered a highly spiritual fruit. And what do we always say that Eve took off the tree?
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's the first thing that came to my mind. Halloween is a
Well, and
time
that's why that's the
occasion.
Barbie, the bobbing of apples, the
That's right.
candy
That's
apple,
exactly right.
the there's a history of really cat.
Meow. Speaking of black cats,
Go on, buddy. Um of they would cut the apple skin, they would skin the apple
that's
and throw the peel and
that was the
uh
first letter of your lover, right?
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's super fascinating. It's crazy. There's some crazy stuff in here. So there's some rituals that witches will do on Samhain. So I'm just telling you guys this stuff. You can do whatever you want, just so long as you and God are good. Like
Yeah, whatever
I don't personally care.
your conscience allows.
Well, I do care, but I'm not going to tell you what to do for sure. Um,
We're
you know,
not saying if you take your kids trick or treating that anybody's going to hell over it. Um, I would say a rule of
people got to
thumb
be.
is let him who glory in the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're going to do a celebration, I mean, my church does, and I'll be up at my church doing
Yeah, I will
our
too.
Hallelujah Fest that we do every single year because it's a fantastic outreach.
Yeah.
I mean, people come because, well, it's fun. We have a big gym, and so we have game stations. All the games are free. The prizes, everybody gets prizes. It's always candy.
Hmm.
There's chili cook off, and it's like an old time harvest festival.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
there's cakewalks and whatever, but really our goal is to make um, new relationships with people in our community in the hopes that they will see the love of Jesus and decide that we're fun to hang around with, and maybe they'll be at church on Sunday.
Yeah, man.
That's what the goal is. The goal is to
Yeah.
foster relationships with people, and I don't think God has a problem with that. I don't
No.
think God has a problem if you take your kid around the street. I would caution you um to fall back on the is it Philippians 4:8, whatsoever things are pure, noble, lovely, of good repute, excellent, think on these things. Um but that should be your everyday. That should be your 365. Um I know I always forget where it's at.
That
Um,
that verse.
uh-huh.
Um, I'm not sure.
But
You quickened my mind to another one. Go ahead.
just do the things that glorify God.
Yeah, well, I mean, Romans 14, right? 5 through 7. One man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. He that regardeth the day regardeth it unto the Lord, and he that regardeth not the day to the Lord, he doth not regard it. So basically, whatever you feel, what the Bible is saying, what the Word is saying is, what you have made up in your mind and what you have peace about with God, do that thing. Like
Right, right,
that's the right thing to do, right? Because if you're doing the thing that does not sit well with your conscience, whether that be celebrating or not celebrating something, it doesn't matter what it is. You are sinning.
right.
You
That's
are
what
sinning
James
against
says.
the
To know what is right and not
right.
do it is sin.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. And so if you have peace about it, do it. And if you don't, then don't. Like it's fine. But I am here to give you the information. Um, which law says that a coven, the best time for a
Coven.
coven, sorry, I keep saying it wrong, coven to be initiated is on Samhain. To gain special knowledge of the craft, you walk around. I thought this was super interesting. There are those dolmens that I was talking about in the UK. They go out, witches go out in the fields and they'll circle them 9 times, and on the 9th time they'll touch the stone, and they're supposedly imbued with knowledge of the craft, like superbly exponential knowledge, way far above what they should.
I bet.
Um,
You know
yeah,
what
I'm
else
sure there
they're
are.
imbued with? The demon
Lots
who just gave them that
lots
knowledge.
of demons that are going to be demonizing. Demons going to
Mm,
demonize. Um,
bleh.
yeah, and this was really fascinating to me. I think you'll like this idea, Shell. So, in both Wiccan ritual and I'm assuming in probably just about any kind of witch type ritual, one of the main things that you have to do is renounce the religion of your immediate culture, whatever that is. Like, whatever the mainstream religion is, you outright reject that. Well, how do you do that? You repeat the most sacred prayer or poem or whatever it is of your culture.
Let me guess, backwards.
Right.
Big surprise.
Well, yeah, I know. But what I realized is that when they do that, when you do that, you are making
But none of the people who are here listening to us are going to do that. But when other people do that,
right,
because y'all won't do that.
you guys won't do that. And if you do, I don't know why you would. But when you do, when anyone
Please
does
don't.
that, when someone does that, what they're doing is relinquishing a measure of Yahweh's protection on their life. That's what they're doing. If you repeat back in mockery one of the most sacred things that God says, it doesn't hurt God. You're hurting yourself.
So
you're
that's
like
what the
saying,
Black
I don't
Sabbath
want anything
is.
to do with you, bro. Like I reject you. Like, okay, well, you reject me, you also reject my protection. Sorry, dude. That's the way it works. Whether you're whether you were a believer or not,
That's why there's that whole, if you listen to the album backwards, blah 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 thing.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about the whole Led Zeppelin thing and all that stuff, which I mean, to some extent, there is some merit there, but I'm also not going to go and demonize Led Zeppelin. Sorry, guys.
Oh, it depends on what you know what the artists and their what are they called? The house that puts it out. Their publishing house. What they do, because there's lots of rumor abounds that there are occult practices done on master records and I mean all sorts of things. And you know what? I mean, obviously the rock and roll industry has banked on that. Thus you have the Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne and all of his crazy tomfoolery. I don't know. I'm not big in I was not allowed to listen to secular music, guys, growing up. But I'm trying to think. Oh, Kiss. Who else? I know.
I mean, that's so funny. All those bands to me, I'm like, those are like the light ones, dude. Those are like the like super chill ones. I'm thinking of bands like Dimmu Borgir, who are like openly black metal Satanists. Like that's who I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of metal.
Even know that they exist on the planet.
Yeah, well, I mean, what can I say? I'm a metalhead. I like metal. But you know what? I mean, the older I got, the more I was like, oh, dude, it's just I don't want to listen to that blasphemousness all day. I just don't want to hear it. Like, I don't mind hearing dissonant, loud noise, but I don't want to hear blasphemy. I just don't. It's not.
Yeah. I can't not hear the words, so I'm not one of those people who can listen to a tune and be like, "Oh, this music is so great." I'm like, I hear the words.
I get you. I get what you're saying. Do you know why? I'm going to be really honest. Do you know why that most people end up listening to metal in the first place? This is a total aside, I know, but actually, this kind of plays into
cathartic.
That's exactly why it's cathartic.
No, I totally get that.
It's totally cathartic. There's a real particular. I can't remember the name of the song, and it's like it's like I watched the music video and I was like, oh god. But like listening to the music was like, yeah, this feels like what's happening
In
in
my
this.
life, I can relate to that. I am
Yeah.
angry, and this sums up why
Well,
I
this was more
feel how I feel.
like human sacrifice type video, and I was like,
No
but it
thanks.
sounded cathartic, and it sounded like that's what was happening, and so whether you like it or not, you're like, oh, I get it, like you're like, oh, I
Right,
understand, I
right,
see what's happening. It's gross. I'm not endorsing it or saying go watch it. I'm just saying.
right.
So that's Samhain, guys. I should also just mention, just real quickly, witches always meet at sacred wells, sacred stones, tops of hills, and they leave extra space for a spirit when they're having food. So
I'm sure they
just putting it out
do.
there. So, do what you want to on Halloween, on Samhain, whatever you're going to call it. But I personally
We're
am not a
probably the only
believer.
two people who even know it's pronounced Samhain.
Yeah,
So, I mean, not the only two, but very small minority.
yeah. There's not a lot of people do. And that's I think it's isn't that the Gaelic pronunciation?
It is the Gaelic
Yeah.
pronunciation.
Um,
It
and
looks like
it
SamHain,
looks like Sam.
and
It sounds
and
like a really nice like boxer or like t-shirt brand or something. Sam
the
Oh,
distinguished gentleman.
don't you just love me? Um.
Ay, ay.
Anyway, don't buy Sam Hain. Don't buy Sam Hain, guys. Golly.
No.
Where are we at with time? I guess we can. Do you want me to get into Babylonian? Are we good? Do you want to call it quits? I looked up the Mesopotamian stuff just because to me it seems to really echo where all this stuff comes from. But it's up to you.
Which no, I think let's go ahead because I mean, other than the fact that October 30th is when the worldwide deluge began, most
That's
interessante.
man, that's so freaking crazy. You need to send me that
I will. I'll totally
source.
send you this
That's
link.
crazy.
As a matter of fact, I'll
Um,
just copy it.
yeah, do it. Um, so I guess we'll go real quickly into just Babylonian religion and ceremonies in general, real quick, guys, and then we'll kind of finish this up. We have a little bit extra that we're going to leave on for our for our patrons and for our Spotifyers. We'll probably not finish out everything about Mesopotamia, but just I'll kind of give some highlights, and then we have some other a little short little tidbit here, but just for fun because it's interesting and it's cool. Um,
Did we talk about the Day of the Dead altars?
we have not
Yes,
we have not
de
talked
la
about that. Do you want to bring that
Muerte.
up?
Well, it's just so it's an interesting
We should
thing.
we should
Everybody,
go there, and I think we just kind of like glossed over
yeah.
it accidentally.
Um,
Well, I
Day of the
can
Dead is November
30
1, right?
so Day of the Dead itself is actually November 2nd, but
It is the second.
Day
All
of the
Saints
Dead
Day.
for yeah, for children is the first, November 1st. And now in Mexico, which is a super pagan, it's probably one of the most pagan Latin American countries there is, like it's so pagan. And then on top of that, I mean, good night. Mexican culture is like death worship. It really is. I mean, just honestly, in some ways, it's lighthearted about death, but
Well,
in other ways,
probably
it's
not any more than the
serious.
Chinese.
Yeah, but in different ways, just the way that every culture does their thing a little bit.
Right,
That's why they're cultures, right?
right.
But yeah, so the second is the actual Day of the Dead, but actually, really, they've just kind of absorbed Halloween at this point.
Like, yeah, here in El Paso, it just kind of goes. Everything's from the
Yeah.
30th on over, and
Yep.
um, I was telling Ricky
Which is interesting, right? Because if we're going off of what Samhain
how,
actually does,
right,
that's I mean that to me gives me a whole new perspective on like how it works
right,
because I
the
really
whole
didn't.
meeting in from beginning of
Right,
sundown,
right,
right, and the couple of days.
yep,
Um, well, because again, we call Halloween because it is All Hallows Evening
Right.
or evening. We've shortened it and pushed it all together. But so it was the evening before. Uh, Geez, starting at sunset on the 30th, going. Sorry, the 31st.
Oh, it was like 30th?
31st
Dusk.
to celebrate November 1st, which
Right.
is the Day of the Martyrs, or
Right. Oh, right.
or All Saints Day.
Yeah, the adapted
Um,
Christianized version.
so it would be 2 full days
Yeah.
worth of commemoration, ceremony, celebration, whatever, appeasement of the spirits, fear,
Right.
um, all of the above. And
Insert your
that's about how it is here.
Yeah.
Like the gals in my office, everybody brings in pictures of
And
their loved
and
ones.
maybe we should, yeah, I was gonna say maybe we should kind of give some context around. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people that watch us are here in Texas, and so they get it. But a lot of people might not know what Dia de los Muertos or Day of the Dead
Hasn't
actually
everybody
is.
watched Coco?
Right. It's actually, being really honest, there's some really good depiction there of a lot of very
Coco
very Mexican
gives
sentiment. It's
very
it's
much
pretty accurate.
so. It like very
Yeah.
accurate.
The, there's a few
I
things
was
that kind of adapt, but
amazed.
most of it is very very precise. It's pretty to the T. Um, if you haven't
So
watched
why
Coco,
you remember your dead?
I'm not gonna lie. Like I lived in Mexico for a long time, and even I got choked up on that movie, man. Because like
Oh man, I cried like a
it's
little
very
girl.
it's such Mexican sentiment. Like it's so accurate, and I was like,
But I think it's also everybody can relate.
yeah, they totally can. They totally can. It's very
And you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with remembering the people you
no.
love who have passed on. It's when it becomes veneration and uh worship that
Yeah.
that you slide
Well,
into
well, and
sinking
the
sand.
issue here is that I don't know if we would call. I mean, I guess we could call it worship. It's so weird because I don't know that worship is the word, but I mean, essentially, I guess it is. I guess it is
You make
because
an altar.
right, exactly. You make an altar, and it's an offering to the dead. It's an offering for them to come and eat.
You bring
Um,
in, so you bring in it at work. Everybody is offered to bring in the photographs of
yep,
their,
their
dead
deceased
loved
loved ones.
ones,
Yep.
and like their favorite things,
Yeah.
their favorite snacks, whatever. I've done it and brought pictures of my Nana and Jordan almonds because those were her favorite snacks.
Ooh, those
You
Jordan
know,
almonds.
I told you my Nana loved Jordan
Yeah.
almonds at the movies. But it's there's something that is kind of a solace for your grief and your hurt
Yeah.
to remember the people that you love who have gone on before.
Yeah.
Um, we just lost a brother at our church and he was older. He was 88 and he was ready to go home and be with the Lord. But his granddaughter, it's been over 10 years and I still get choked up when I think about her. His granddaughter graduated with Ricky,
We're in the same
our
class.
sweet
Yeah.
our sweet Jill. Um and his passing, brought up her death again. I'm sure knowing Jill and God being so kind as he is, I'm pretty sure Jill got to be right there
Yeah.
to greet her grandpa as he, entered into his rest. And there's something about that that's very bittersweet you know, and it was the first thing I thought of when word went out that he had gone over to the unseen realm. You know, I thought, oh man, he's Jill is greeting him. He's getting a
Yeah.
hug that he hasn't had in 10 years, you know, and while the pain is still there, there's also a beauty in that for me.
Yeah. Certainly.
And hopefully for their family is that's is they're thinking about that, you know, and it's bittersweet. Um but I think we need that. You know, when you lose somebody, your love doesn't stop.
Right.
They are now in a place where we cannot get to them, and maybe that's part of the allure of the Day of the Dead, of All Saints Day, of the Day of the Martyrs.
Certainly.
Um,
In part,
it's
right?
that wanting to reach out just a little bit again to that person you love that you miss. And as believers in Jesus, the hope the hope that is the anchor for our soul.
Hmm.
Sorry.
Okay.
That is the hope of resurrection.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's what this anchor for our soul, this hope, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That that God is true, and that because Jesus was resurrected, we will resurrect and we
Yeah.
will be with the ones
With
we
him.
love for eternity, and that we will be with him for eternity. And so we don't have to use the crutch of the Day of the Dead
Right.
or Samhain or Halloween, because
It's all grasping
we're
at
going to
straws.
be reunited. Man, this is just a tiny intermission. Did I say that word right? Is it
Intermission. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um it feels like forever, but it's also a very short time, and
Yeah.
we will be reunited. Oh, and it's going to be, what a day that's going to be, you know, to
Yeah.
meet your family and your loved ones at the feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
Oof, I cannot wait. Like, I look forward to that, like kids look forward to Christmas gifts.
Hmm.
And I think that we get so wrapped up in the here and now that the most thought we give to our true life, which is what eternity is going to be, it's our real life. This is our shadowlands. Um, is little things like trick or treating and Halloween and uh, these things that are such watered down,
Imitations.
bad imitations.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until like right now.
Hmm.
um, that God, man, God is really gracious to us. Um, we get sucked in to other things because we're trying to assuage hurt.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to find a band-aid, some sort of balm to make our hurt less. But Jesus said, I've got you. Just
Hmm.
trust me. Know
Yeah.
me. Look at it. And look at what I have done for you, who I
Yeah.
am to you, how I have been, and rest in that. I know this cat. Come here. Move out of the way.
Yeah,
His
man. That's good. That's good stuff. That's
side
an
of,
interesting perspective, man.
yeah, I have a lot of those. I
Yeah.
have the weirdest
That's why.
perspective.
That's why we started. That's why we started a podcast.
Just
Um,
so.
that's
Cat,
that's really good.
you're in the way.
You know what? I think actually, Shell. I
Oh,
think
you're a jerk.
we're gonna call it for our regular portion, and then I'm just gonna continue with the rest behind the paywall.
Sounds
So
like a plan.
yeah, I think that we've gone over really the essentials that we wanted to cover. If you guys want to understand why Babylon and Mesopotamia and the origins of all this religious crazy cult stuff is relevant, you have to join us behind the paywall. It's only $3. It's only $3. Anyway, we in any case, we love you guys. We bless you guys. If you are behind the paywall, stick around. We're going to be right back. But why don't you give the blessing real quick, Shell, on this one, and then I'll give the
Right.
blessing on the flip side.
Sounds good. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his countenance towards you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom. God bless.
And really, Maranatha,
Yeah, no kidding.
we're ready, Lord Jesus.
We are.
Spirit and the bride say, come.
Come, baby, come. And we're back. We never left, actually, because you're behind the paywall. So
You know, Rick, one other interesting thing
what's up?
about this is they talk about the veil being thin during this time of year and thinner in certain places, the thin places. Um, and it's very discordant to me to have people say, "Oh, that whatever worship service was so great or that message was so great. Don't you just feel God's presence?" And I'm like, "The Holy Ghost abides in me.
Yeah,
Whether I acknowledge his presence at any given time or not, he is always with me. His presence is
sir.
always with me." That veil, dude, that thing was torn from top down.
Right.
And the Holy Ghost is always with me.
Well, the thing is, Shell, is that we were designed. I mean, and we're going to talk about this in future episodes, right? You guys will probably love this portion, and you'll get to hear a lot more about this. We are our. Sorry. Let me get my terminology straight before we move any further. Um, Shell's like, I know where Ricky's going with this. We are not our bodies. We are not our bodies. You need to know that you are not your body. Your body was given to you, and your body is a ritualistic instrument that exists to fulfill the plan of God. And there are many, many plans of God. And some of those plans are fulfilled in your sovereign nature, in your sovereignness. In fact, many of them are. But nonetheless, you are not your body. You are a soul in a body who will be deposited into a glorified body. What's up, Holy?
Man, I can't wait for that. I'm
It's gonna be
just
fun.
saying.
It's gonna be a cool episode, and it's gonna be a cool experience because it's gonna be eternity. Um,
Cannot wait.
but having said that, um, these bodies are. Holly said it great. She's like, I asked, have you ever been in a liminal? Felt like you were in a liminal space before? And I don't think anybody even knew what the heck I was talking about. I should have been very frank and been like, hey, do you ever felt like the spiritual world and the physical world are bleeding over so that people would know what the heck I'm talking about? Maybe I will. But our lovely friend Holly answered, well, when I was on illicit substances, I certainly did. For sure. And
Right.
I go, sure, that's accurate. The body is definitely a spiritual antenna. We are designed that way. That's what the body is for, right? So I understand when they say, I got the touchy feelies, is what they're really saying when they go to church. I got the touchy feelies from the
Right.
Holy Spirit. And now I feel like I'm
I
connected
got
to
the
God.
Holy Ghost goosebumps.
That's right. And I'm not, dude, I'm not knocking that. That's awesome. Like when you feel the Spirit of God there,
Right.
that's awesome. But the accompaniment of the understanding that God never abandons you and will never abandon you. He says he will be with us even till the end of the age. So we need not feel like we're abandoned just because we don't feel the goosebumps. So I'm on board with you there. That's just providing some context for it for
one of those.
Like we need.
Right. One of those songs that I really like, A Waymaker.
Oh yeah, man.
The refrain, even when I don't feel it, you're working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Which is most the time I neither feel it nor see it, but he's working out his plan for my life.
Yeah.
Whether I perceive it or not at that moment.
That's like for me, that's like every month now. Like I don't see it coming, and I'm like, okay, whenever, dude, whenever you're ready to like hook me up with taking care of all this stuff, I'm waiting. Here I am, ready to do it. So I get it. I really get it. But to me, Shell, it has become spending time with God in the morning, but really, really you can sit down and read the Word, and you can pray. Bless you. But
thank you. Sorry.
But you can be present and not be present.
Oh, heck yeah.
I am often in prayer and I am present but not present. And as of late, I just had to come back to the basics and be like, dude, I can't do this. And I'm sorry for trying. It's not up to me. You have to make these things work. I'm not going to worry about them. There's nothing I can do about them. So,
we're on the literal same wavelengths.
Right? But I like the way my pastor says it. He says, this is your promise. This is your problem. This is not my problem. This is your problem. And he's right. And my wife when I started saying that, and I was like, he's right. My pastor's right. And she's like, don't say that. I'm like, well, then go read the Word for yourself. That's what God says. It's his problem. Give it to him. Don't be dragging around problems that don't belong. It's like, oh man, I can't fix such and such.
Why are you striving past your burdens on Jesus? Right. Like, really?
I don't think God's angry. He's like, yeah, bring it to me, dude. That's what it's for.
Well, about time you got on board.
Exactly. Oh,
it took you long enough to think it through, right?
All you gotta do is say, you want me to fix it?
Would you like to move out of the way so I can do what I was going to do, child?
Yeah. I can stop the train, but if you're in front of it, it's not going to help, right? You're not going to stop it. So.
Right. This week has been stressful for me. The whole thing with Israel and Gaza has got me in the fields, in a lot of prayer, and anybody who's listened to any of our other episodes already knows that I pray for Israel. We're supposed to pray for Israel. It is a mandate.
And you and I aren't always 100% on the same page on everything. For the most part, we're pretty in alignment. But in this particular aspect, in this particular topic, we're like 100% synchronized is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
On our thoughts for Israel and our prayers for Israel, and you don't have to agree with us. That's fine. You can call us what is it? They call us
Zionists.
Yeah, but they call us like, is it dispensationalists? Isn't that the word?
Oh,
they like to use.
Yeah.
For them being theology replacers. You don't have to like Israel. Frankly, that's fine. You don't.
No, you don't.
But you do have to pray for them.
Absolutely. We're mandated pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And the thing is when you do that, if God brings peace to Israel, he's going to bring peace to the other side as well, because
peace to the Middle East.
I don't get why people don't get that.
It's brilliant. It's a really brilliant. Well, because
God's pretty freaking cool, man.
Well, because I mean, I know that this is going to ruffle feathers, but a lot of Arabs don't want peace with Israel. That's really
Right.
the truth, right? Like a lot of
It
them
is
don't.
the truth.
They see them as an obstacle, as a problem, and as an impedance. So I mean,
Well,
it's
and
not all of them, not all of them.
that was foretold. And
Right?
yeah, not all of them. You can't lump everybody up, but
No.
this week, all of that. Like, I've spent so much time in prayer. Every time I see a newscast, whatever, we've all seen that poor guy with his 8-year-old daughter. I think her name is Emily. At one of the kibbutz, at kibbutzim, at a kibbutz. He had let her stay the night with her friend, and she he says, I didn't know what happened to her, and then they told me we found Emily. She's dead, and I said, good. He said, and he's crying. He's a dad, and he's so heartbroken,
Oh,
and
I know what you're talking about.
And you can see it, and he's like, because I knew the other option was she was in Gaza and she was being tortured. And she had no food, no water, and terrified. He said, so I was glad that my 8-year-old daughter is dead. And my heart literally breaks for him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, every time I've seen it, I've just been like, Lord Jesus, let him know you and give him peace. Let him know you and give him peace. Because I don't know what the heck else am I supposed to pray. And when you're moved by somebody's plight, the thing to do is to do what Jesus did. And before Jesus moved on behalf of anybody, the word tells us so many times, and he had compassion on him, and he XYZ, and he had compassion on them, and he XYZ'd. Whatever it was Jesus did, he moved out of compassion.
Yeah.
And when we're moved with compassion, I, I can't bring his daughter back. I can't give him a hug. All that I can do is pray, Holy Spirit, bring him peace and bring him to you.
Yeah.
And so I've prayed so many times for all of these, what I've seen, and even in Gaza, oh, Lord, please give these people another opportunity to know you before the bombing tonight, or whatever. I mean, I'll be genuine. These are how my prayers are. People are going to die.
Yeah.
There
They
is
are.
bombing. This is a war.
It's inevitable.
People are going to die on both sides. And all that I can pray, what matters most is not let them live, but let them live with you eternally. So that's what I pray. And I pray it an awful lot. And I've been talking to God in inordinate amount of time the last 13 days. And I've been so tired and stressed. We were supposed to record a couple of days ago, and I was like, Rick, can't do it, man. I do not feel good. My stomach is bothering me. I'm so tired. And then the next day, the same. Um, and I know it's because my spirit's heavy. And
I get it.
two things happened this morning that changed it. One, I was like, Rick, you got to pray, man. And he did. My friend prayed for me, and
Unprompted, by the way.
so the Holy Spirit
Yeah.
tells us what to
Which
pray,
is
man,
which
and
is
it's
funny
the
because
right thing.
we usually I usually wake up, or you usually hop on and like be like, hey, what's going on? Well, I was like, hey, I'm not going to say anything to you. Let's just pray because I feel like I should pray for you. So I'm going to pray, and I prayed. That was it. That was it. So
It was such a. I was telling Ricky that, and it was on Marco Polo, so I didn't even listen to it until like 3 hours later. But it doesn't matter. I listened to it at the right time, and
right.
he gave it at the right time, and God met both of us in it. And he had prayed, and I was telling him, man, like what was going on in my head is like a scene in a movie where they put you on the camera person on a very busy corner, I don't know, in the middle of New York City, and people are just rushing by, and then they put it on 5 times speed. And so all that you see is, and that's what was going on in me. And all of a sudden, it, it just, everything slowed down, and it went from the fast cacophony to slowing down to a heartbeat, my heartbeat going fast, and nothing but my heartbeat slowing down with each beat until there was just such a calm and such a peace and just a total silence for me. And I needed that very much. I had been that street corner. It was crazy. And God just brought me back in and settled me down. And then on, I don't know if it was TikTok or Instagram. They're, they're too similar for me to know for sure. I think it was Insta.
All bleeds.
I don't know. My daughter sent me something, right?
It's like the
And
thinning of the veil. I'm just
I started scrolling, and there's this guy, and I follow him because, as I'm fond of saying, his theology is on point. He's just, I don't know who he is, Trent's Tribe or something like that. I mean, he's a pastor, but he's pretty cool. And
solid.
he had he had this 6-pound bag of Skittles, man. It had been his birthday, and I don't know, one of his some person gave him a bag of Skittles. He said, I've got like a year's supply of Skittles here. And he said, my older son had come by. Hey, Dad, can I have some? Sure. Gave him a handful. And the younger son walked by the older son and saw that he had Skittles. I want some Skittles. And the older son had a problem. He just had a very limited, small handful of Skittles. And so he told his brother, go find Dad. He's got an unlimited supply of Skittles. Go to him. And he said, well, I don't have an unlimited supply, but I have about a year's supply. He said, but I realized in that moment that God was telling me something. He says, and I'm like, oh yeah, I am tracking with you, brother. And he goes, my older son knew to tell my younger son, go to the Father. The Father's got what you need. The Father gave him what he needed, and he could have given out of his meager supply, but he knew better. He didn't say go find the Skittles. He said go find the Father. The Father has what you need. And it was a beautiful. I don't need the Skittles. I'm not even looking for Skittles. I just want to spend some time with the Father. I might get Skittles out of it and cool beans if I do, but it's not about the Skittles. It's about the Father has what I need. But I'm not going to, I'm looking for what I need. I just needed to be with Him, present with Him, because I had been with Him and talking to Him and reading the Word and not just that verbal Bible study Danny and I do, but I spend time in the Word because it's where I go for my answers. But sometimes you can do all the things and still not really be present. And I needed that to be present.
Grounding.
And honestly, that had nothing really to do with our topic.
Believe
but
it or not, I actually do have something that might bring us back to rituals. Believe it or not, it's funny that you say that because we were talking about off camera about God's promises and God's what God tells us and stuff. And I don't know how long ago it was, but the Lord told me one day. He goes, well, several things, but one of those was every morning you are to pray, and you are to declare over yourself. You are to tell yourself, my words have power because they're your words. Every morning you are to pray this thing. And I don't always remember to do it, but you know, it does come back to memory every once in a while, and I prayed it. So this morning I said, okay, here's the deal. You know, send me to share your gospel with whoever I need to share it with. And your words are my word. My words have power because they're your words. And that's one of those things that I always forget to quote, but I should always be saying it because it's true. My words have power because they're your words, not mine. And honestly, I was in my space, and I actually do have a ritualistic space for my prayer time. It's on this half of the closet, sitting on the ground on a little like plastic tray, and that's where my Bible's just sitting there in my walk-in closet. It's just there. The left side is my wife's side.
You have your prayer closet.
I do. And it's also a closet. So there's crap everywhere, but like I have a little area where it's I guess we'll call it an altar, right? And I was you pray differently every morning. God has something different every morning, and God's told me that. He's like, I have something to say to you every morning if you'll listen. It's another one of those. And as I was just kind of sitting there and I was praying and I was just thinking about the day and stuff, it was one of those times where I woke up late. I really didn't have time to read properly or pray properly or any of that stuff. And I was just sitting there, like I read a quick chapter and I was like, oh, I really want to keep reading, but I have to discipline myself to pray more because I know I won't if I don't. But as I just sat and prayed, I mean, it was just a few minutes, but like it was one of those times where I didn't even want to leave where I was at. I was like, I just want to sit here and pray. I just want to sit here and talk to you. I don't want to start the day yet. I'm not ready to start the day. You know, I just want to sit here and just bask in this presence, you know, that you're allowing me to just feel. And not like it wasn't even like a goosebumps type of thing. It's just like, I know you're here with me, and I know that this is the time where I can be present with you and no one will distract me, you know? And it was weird because usually when I get up from praying, my ritualistic space for praying, I usually like my brain zones out and I'm like, okay, all right, gotta start the day now. Like that's it. You know, it's hard for me to stay focused and grounded. But for whatever reason, I didn't turn anything on when I got in my car. I was just kind of talking to God and just kind of, you know, like, hey, I don't know what you got today, but you know, just, you know, I'm here for it, whatever it is. And called my sister, and then I think we hung up after like a minute or two, 3 minutes, something like that. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm gonna pray for Shelly. I'm just gonna pray for Shelly. It was not planned. It was just totally spontaneous. It was totally spontaneous. And God fulfills his promises, even when we don't understand some of them at all. And usually when we're least anticipating them, he fulfills them. So
Right.
you sharing that, for me, confirms all the stuff that God was dealing with in my heart this morning, which is really cool. In a good way, not in a heavy way, you know, in a real lighthearted way.
Isn't it nice that he loves us and it doesn't have to be some special time of year up on some mountain or
some ceremony or ritual or
right.
I mean, we can, but actually God actually it's funny that we're talking about rituals, because one of the things I've learned with God, I don't think there's anything wrong with ritual. I don't think there's anything wrong with ceremony. I don't either. No. But right. I found a lot of times the most spontaneous moments, the most what would otherwise be described as irreverent moments, to me sometimes are the most intimate moments that I have with God. They're the best times that I get to have with God. And when I'm not trying to force it, when I'm not trying to like, oh, now I have to do this. Okay, now I have to do that. That's fine and it works, but it's not personable, you know, and that's really not the way God intended it. It's really not, especially when we didn't mention this in you know, the main portion, but you talked about there being a need for blood, and Christ was that propitiatory sacrifice. Right. We need that blood, and that's why Christians, one, that's why Christians can be Christians, but two, that's also the reason we don't have to do any further sacrifices. Right. In fact, doing further sacrifices as a Christian tries to annul the blood of Christ, tries to annul the sacrifice of Christ. And so we actually do not only ourselves, but we do God himself a vast
The
injustice.
cross.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen the meme going around on Facebook. It's going through my circle right now anyhow, but it's the picture of a stone house with the door, the front door, and then there's blood over the door jamb. And it said the spirit of death or the angel of death didn't look in the house to find out who was worthy of the blood. He just saw it on the door. And I thought there's something to that effect, but I was just like, that's so right.
It's so, I mean, it's so important, right? Like, I'll never forget that my pastor, he hasn't talked about this in a long time, but he mentions it every once in a while, that he was watching a documentary. I think it was about like CSI type stuff, like just what do we call that in English? I can't think of the word. Oh my gosh.
Forensics.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't think of the word in English. Happens a lot. You might have noticed if you're watching the podcast.
Your brain goes back and forth between
really
those languages really well, though.
Especially when I'm like doing it all day, and sometimes I literally will be talking and I forget what language we're talking in. Sometimes I'm like, wait, which one? Oh, okay, right. He was watching. I think it was a forensics documentary, and it was really fascinating to me because the thing that he honed in on was when they were talking about a crime scene that that it's impossible to hide a crime scene because the blood shows up. You just pull out the proper light and the blood shows right up. And when they viewed it, and I think I've talked about this before, but when they viewed it under a microscope, there are tiny particles in the blood that shine, and they are in the shape of a cross.
That's the laminin.
That's what it is. That's exactly
it is. It's called laminin.
It's crazy. I mean, it makes sense.
And that's what makes the luminol work. The laminin.
I put in laminin, and the first thing that shows up is laminin cross. Believe that or not? Huh?
I love it. You know what? Louis Giglio is who I learned about laminin from.
Yeah.
And I forget which one it is. How Great Is Our God? Or what was the other one? I don't know. Those are some of the best DVDs ever. Some of the best teaching to ever come out of Passion, and there's been a lot of pretty good teaching to come out of Passion Church, but
it's crazy, man. It's really, really fascinating. It's that's very cool. Somebody made a pendant necklace out of laminin. That's cool.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm torn. I don't know if I continue or if I just do this one further down the road and make it like almost an exclusive. I'll put like 15 minutes on, and then let the rest be behind the paywall. I don't know. What do you think, Shel? I'm torn because Babylon. It's late, and Babylon and Mesopotamia is long. I mean, it's like I can talk about this for at least half an hour. I can go for it.
Give us the cliff notes, and then we'll do a whole episode on it.
That sounds good. So, from the beginning of time. No, I'm just kidding.
Sure.
So, I'll try and go through this as quickly as possible. One thing that's super important about, and just giving some context around Babylonian and we'll just say Mesopotamian religion and ceremonies and stuff, is that astronomy is super essential for them. It is so very important. And unlike what many of us think about the ancients, that the ancients thought that the gods were stars and planets, they actually were not 100% convinced of that. They just thought that they were, funny enough, they thought that the stars and the planets themselves were ritualistically representative of the gods. So what those planets and stars did would affect them, right? That's
Oh,
why
well,
they
aren't
believed.
they?
I mean, it's crazy. I don't know. It's very interesting perspective. Well, the point I want to get to here is that the way that we've talked about alchemy being like chemistry for them, like to them,
Mm-hmm.
alchemy and chemistry were intertwined. There was no difference. Like there was no difference. Is the same way astronomy and astrology was for them. Astrology was no different to them than astronomy was. They would study it just the same way, but they had different. That's really what it comes down to, right? A scientist sees stuff and applies no religious content to it. An astrologist sees the same content and applies meaning to it. That's really the
Right,
only
right,
difference,
right.
and lives differently according to that. So Mesopotamia really was the one that brought this down, passed it off to India, passed it off to Greece. That filtered down from Greece into the Islamic world, and then from there to the European world. Um, it's a lot more than horoscopes. In fact, they say that anybody worth their salt, it's kind of a funny thing to say, anything worth their salt as a magician in the old world, in fact probably in the current world too, with has at least a rudimentary knowledge of astrology. They almost have to. It's like an essential piece of their their religious practice. It's almost necessary.
Well,
Which
I mean, the wise men studied the stars.
there you go, there you go. And
That's we knew that the Magi the, had been studying the stars. The stars foretold that there was a king being born,
correct.
and so they followed the stars as they had been doing before the bright one showed up, and found Jesus. So,
Yep. um,
but
yeah.
even sorry,
No, no, no.
even Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Ezekiel, they all were considered wise men
Yeah.
in Babylon,
Right.
and they were taught these arts. They were
Right.
taught the Mesopotamian uh, religious practices.
Liturgy.
They
Right.
were taught astronomy and astrology and uh, divining the signs and um,
Right.
being able to interpret dreams.
Yeah.
Those things, those were all arts uh, considered a part of divination
Yep.
that the Magi did, that the
Yep.
wise men did. Um, and that goes from uh, Sumer and Babylon, which is modern day Iraq, all the way across to Egypt. And that's why Joseph was, oh my gosh, the whole Joseph and Moses, they were taught these things
Yeah.
as part of their upbringing
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the
Absolutely.
wisdom of the courts of the Pharaoh.
Wisdom of the age. Yep. Absolutely, man. Um, it's funny that you'll like this. It's funny that you mentioned that because where is it at that I was when I started looking up basic terms. I don't know why I didn't mention it, but it didn't seem relevant in the previous information. But I do want to mention it here. It's kind of cool. I looked up the word for myth, the definition for myth, and it's something, regardless of how much it defies or aligns with the plausible, is so ingrained in one's culture that it appears as fact. I thought that was a phenomenal definition.
It really is.
Yeah, it really is. And regarding what you're talking about with the with Daniel and his three buddies being wise men, I really related what our myths are today. What is our myth today? Our myth today is that the equivalent of myth for us today is my truth. My truth. It's the way I see it. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what anyone else is saying, because it's part of the culture now, right? Like, it's like, well, just for example, right? America's racist. Whether you believe it or not, it's already part of the culture. It's my truth. It's part of the myth. So it's absorbed into the culture now. Like, there's not really, you can't really like scrape it off at this point. You can
And
talk
whether it's factual or not is irrelevant. It is
Correct.
ingrained.
Right. And
Therefore,
myths are moldable, right? Which is, yeah. Anyway, I thought that it was kind of relevant, but I just didn't include it. But so it's here now. I thought this was super interesting because when we were talking about astrology, I went back into the book of Enoch because I was curious. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Who are the guys that gave the understanding of astrology and all that stuff, right? Well, it turns out that Hermes is ID'd or connected with Thoth, right? The Egyptian god. They were the founders, or this person, same person, right? Same individual,
right.
was the founder of both alchemy and astrology. In Hebrew, well, or in the book of Enoch, it breaks it up as Barakijal is the god of astrology, or the teacher of astrology, and Azazel, I don't know if I'm saying it right. He's the one that taught medicines, pharmakia.
Azazel is the god. Oh my gosh. Azazel is who, so when you have the atonement sacrifice, the sin sacrifice, the goats, the two goats, you have the one that the priest, the scapegoat. So you've got the sacrifice. Right. You put the priests put their hands on the goat, transferring everybody's sins over, slit its throat, do the blood thing that they do, the way they do it, and burn it. Or burn the certain parts of it and take the rest out. The other goat, the scapegoat, is taken out into the wilderness to Azazel.
Oh, wow. Holy moly.
There you go. Sorry, I was really going somewhere in line with what you were saying.
That's weird.
Right? To Azazel. Per God's command in Leviticus.
The scapegoat.
Yep. Read it yesterday or the day before. I read it this week.
Wow. That's crazy.
Right.
So what's interesting about these astrological understandings is that anyone can give an astrological reading based on a mere natal chart. All you have to know is when you were born, where you were born, and that's enough, because they know exactly what was going on in the sky to determine what your fate was. It's all bound in the stars, baby. It's all bound in the stars. That's why I'm going back to it. That's why when they tell you,
that means whoever else was born at the same hospital that I was would be just like me.
I know.
I'm not. I don't know. I'm like, I just can't buy into that.
Well, but also, if you have all those things happening in the sky at once, you can apply the ones you think are most relevant.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, when you're obfuscative, then you can.
Well, frankly, when you're probably possessed, you can figure it out real quick. you
Well,
know?
yeah, because the thing possessing you doesn't necessarily always belong in our timeline.
Correct.
It can
Um,
go in and outside of linear time.
absolutely. Well, that was me. I could have sworn I saw something move. Okay.
Sorry, I
No,
keep interrupting.
no, dude, it's okay. It's all right. It's like 2:30 in the morning, and so I'm like, is somebody in
I
here?
know, right?
I swear to you, a while ago when we were talking, no joke, when you were like telling a story, I was telling you the end of my story. I literally like heard a bunch of people like crying. It was freaking me out, and I was like, "What in
I
the
saw
world?"
you look away
Yeah,
and
I was freaked out. I was like,
pull
"What
up
was
your
that?" I think
headset.
it was probably just, I don't know, maybe it was something. I don't know, but it sounded. I think it was just the air from the fan. Um, so in ancient astrology, Babylonian, Egyptian, and Hellenistic, from Babylonian is where we get horoscopes, basically. And those are based on seasonal movements, so that's no surprise there. But unlike now, it was based on 5 planets. That's all they knew about. So they put whatever reason. Of course, they include the sun and the moon as well, right? So you had other stuff going on, which is probably where we get our days for the week from those seven.
The
Um,
7.
yeah, yeah. In fact, I'm almost positive that's where
No,
we get
we
our.
don't. God gave us our 7.
Oh well, I mean, you know.
God gave the 6th and then the 7th day,
Hey,
and then it
I am
starts over.
curious. I am curious. Um, I mean, that's how we named our calendar days. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
oh, I don't mean. Oh, please. I would never make the supposition that God was like, oh, I'll just name after the planets, gods that they called planets gods. You know, no, no, no. I am curious what the Egyptians called their days of the week because they had 10 days. They had a 10-day week. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's weird, huh? Anyway, um,
That's interesting.
it is very curious.
Man, and kind of
Uh,
messes everything up
yeah,
for
I
them.
mean, your body as well. Your body needs to rest. Um,
Right.
they practiced obviously divination, but really astrology was like their main go-to for divination. Like that is how they divined more than anything, which is very interesting. Um, like we had mentioned, creations they would create certain concoctions on certain days for purposes of remedies. Right, they had to be done on certain days.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, for festivals and religious activities. I mean, that goes without saying.
Right.
Um, Now, this is where it starts to get pretty interesting. That's kind of just like the basic overview. So, I watched a really, really interesting video, and I really recommend you guys, if you're just curious about other religions in general, I really recommend you guys watch a podcast called Let's Talk Religion. Really good, really, really good. Guy just dives straight in, but he works with a guy from Esoterica. Um, he collabed with 2 other people on that particular episode, but it was really interesting. Um, so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about demonology and ghosts in Mesopotamia. It seems only appropriate. Um, so in Sumerian and Akkadian, the word for demons was udug for Sumerian and utuku for Akkadian. But unlike what you and I perceive as demons, and I'm going to give some context around this about my thoughts, and I'm sure Shell will as well. Um, Demons could be both good and evil with different personalities, which sounds very bipolar, like most demons are actually. Um,
Yeah, most of them start off making you think there's something nice.
that's right. That's exactly right. But it was believed that demons caused personal or societal issues. They caused illnesses. They caused both mental and physical. They affected crops and fields. They started strife in society. Um, they took different forms and had different characteristics, but they were overall kind of like identified as one particular type of being. Um, I thought this was fascinating because you'll see here in a second why this keeps coming back up, and the reason I even mentioned Azazel as the provider of knowledge of medicines, because just like alchemy and just like astrology, medicine was the same way. You basically called a witch doctor for all your ailments. It was no different. And it's funny because in the video he's like, just like you and I probably would go to a doctor, you would call a witch doctor. In Mesopotamia, there was no difference. You would just they because why? They knew how to make remedies and medicines, and they also did the spiritual function. It's
Right.
amazing to me in the West how we just like eviscerated religion. I'm just like,
Yeah.
why did we do this? I mean, it's demonic, honestly, but neither here nor there. So, but there was all sorts of different ones, and I'll just name them real quick. There was Lamashtu, which is an example that's used in the video, that would basically stalk or eat babies.
Ew.
And so, yeah, she was pretty gross. But they didn't really know where her origin was from. But one of her names is daughter of Anu, and Anu is one of the gods in I think it's Akkadian. And so they say that she potentially had god status, but then for some reason she was cast to the earth, or she was abandoned here on earth. She was excommunicated. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm
Huh.
like, dude, that sounds like a giantess. That's a giantess if I ever heard one. That's a
Yeah.
giantess. Um, but then there was other, so they would use basically other demons to protect them from demons. So Pazuzu, yeah, I know. Pazuzu was a protective spirit against Lamashtu, which is the baby eater, basically. Um, and so you had stuff like that, right? But they also believed in, and I think this is where Lilith comes from. They would call her a Lilitu or Lilith. They would be a
Mm-hmm.
woman spirit that had died in childbirth. There was also an Ardat Lili, which is a woman who died before she was ever able to be married, and she would haunt men. So incubus, succubus,
Mm-hmm.
Lilith. Um, yeah, it's very very interesting. So how did they exorcise these kind of creatures or these problems? Right, there was all sorts of different
Good
ways they would do it.
question.
Um, I thought this was very fascinating. There was tons of magic in Mesopotamia, tons of magic, right? But most of the magic was protective magic. It was not intended to do harm. So you're really just trying to look out for yourself. You would seek, and obviously, how did they do this? They would seek the gods directly for intervention in their lives. They didn't pray to any of these demons. They didn't really ask the demons to help. They might have used the demons, apparently, is what it looks like, but really they sought the gods themselves for intervention. And I thought that was really interesting. Um, and there were witches. There were also witches in Mesopotamia, and these were the ones that were malevolent magic users. They were called kashaptu, evil cosmic beings that use magic for evil instead of for protection. Makes sense. So, how did they kind of fight against these witches or these demons, or how did they deal with this stuff? Right, if all this stuff was protective. Well, we had mentioned totems, right, earlier in the episode, but there's
Right.
also magic amulets that they would use to dispel stuff. And it's so weird. I don't know why in my mind I was like, I grew up and I would see these things for dispelling or amulets and stuff, and it never really crossed my mind that these were like things that people actually used. I don't know why when I was younger, like it didn't click in my head, but it just didn't for whatever reason. Um, And so they would use all sorts of incantations, and they would imbue these amulets with power by the use of ritual. They would imbue these incantations, or they would craft them in a certain way so that they would be useful. And this was really interesting. There were these ritual specialist exorcists, these ashipu, which were basically these witch doctors, and they practiced divination, new medical, herbal meds, and all sorts of stuff like that. They were able to do exorcisms, as the name might suggest. But what was really interesting is the way that they did it. I think this is the origin of the voodoo doll, because they would take these figurines, okay? They would craft them in the shape of the demon that was tormenting them, or the spirit that was like the ghost that was tormenting them, right? And what did they do with this? Well, they would give this figurine, this representation of this god or demon or whatever we're calling it, demon rather. They would give it food, or they would treat it nicely, or they would try to get it on their good side, so to speak. And then once they had done this for several days, this witch doctor every day would come and do part of the ritual slowly but surely. and imbue or well, not imbue, cast this ritualistic spell onto this thing, so that when they finally finished the ritual, they were able to take it out and bury it somewhere so that it would no longer affect this individual. That's how they dealt with it.
Man, why do I see a really bad version of Jumanji?
Right?
Some kid unburying that thing. Oof.
And
Stop
it
all
was,
archaeological digs.
yep. And that's what they would do with spirits. It's super crazy. And what I thought was really interesting is that, and later on, those amulets, because eventually, at first, they were totemistic, like we had talked about. They were just like images of animals, and they didn't have any right. But slowly and surely, they started to actually have writing on them that would dispel these things, and so they could wear them or whatever.
Incantations.
Yeah, exactly. And what I thought was super interesting was that these, um, so the same thing for witches, right? That was like with spirits, but with witches, they would take that effigy that they had made and they would burn it, and then it was super weird. They said that they would, I don't know how they would even determine this. Um, oh, that they would burn the effigy, right? And as they burned it, that smoke would cause the witch's spirit to go up to the gods, and the gods would punish her or him, right, for having done this. It was really interesting, man. It was very, very curious.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Um, it was very interesting to me to see their hierarchy. It really does make sense with a lot of with a lot of what Genesis, well, all through the Old Testament, but Genesis especially explains to us about these giants, right? And they're them being the progeny of these. I mean, this bastardization of
Right?
um, of progeny. And what was super interesting to me was that even though these demons were supposedly sometimes good and sometimes bad, the weird thing is that instead of how did they, because they would exercise, right, exercise
Mm-hmm.
these ghostly spirits, but how did they deal with demons? They would go directly to the gods, and all I could think was, dude, it's like you're going to complain to the guy's parent.
Right?
This guy won't leave me alone. Like, hey, your kid is like out of order. They need to be taken care of. They need to like discipline him. I was like, it's so crazy. Like, it's almost like humans don't want to see it. Like, they
Right.
just don't want to see it. And I'm like, it's freaking everywhere, man. Like, it's unavoidable. It's crazy.
That is insane. That's
Yeah,
where you should stop.
that's where I'm stopping. I'm done. I don't have
Oh,
anything
that's
else.
perfect.
Um,
That's super
we could
interesting.
talk about the golem, but that'll be for a different time.
It
Oh, guys, we're done. That was a long episode.
is
I
a
knew it
long
would be.
episode.
I knew it would be, man. There's a ton, and I probably didn't even touch like a lot of other stuff we could have talked about.
Right. It's always that way.
That's
But
okay.
you know what? Like, when all is said and done, I know we've thrown a ton of information at you, and we talk about a lot of this super matter of factly, but we could list a bunch of
We have a lot of
spiders.
questions.
Oh yeah. But we could list a lot of spiders, but that doesn't mean we expect you to go and pick them up and
Sure,
examine them.
sure.
And that's exactly how this is. It's very interesting. Um, the what's the word I want? Roots of of the ceremonies and the times of the thinning of the veil. Um, don't do this. Don't try this at home.
No.
Don't honestly, it's in I was telling Ricky, I there was a time when I could read um whatever and I could find out more uh, um I could really delve into the occult. And there was a time when it became very appealing to me. Um, and then God removed, like really removed all of it from my life. I just quit I didn't read anything that had anything to do with witchcraft. I gave up all Harry Potter things. I used to be a very big Harry Potter fan. I don't think I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Harry Potter. If you like HP and you collect the stuff, you do you, boo boo.
More power to you.
Um, God basically told me, you know what? I have things for you to tell people. I don't want them tripping up over that.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay.
That's actually exactly the reason that I mean, it wasn't like a big give up for me, but still, that's the reason I stopped drinking. It's not that I have
Yeah,
a problem with it. It's not that I have a problem with anybody else drinking. It's because it was like,
right.
hey man, if you want to spread messages about me, that's really going to get in the way. You need to stop. If you want to be taken seriously about my word, you need to stop. And so I did.
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah, that's how witchcraft was for me. But when Ricky was like, I watched this video and I was like, man, I think to watch one video that um I was looking for ley line stuff and no, I couldn't get through
It just
10
wasn't
minutes.
going in.
I
Yeah,
was like, nope, that is not, I can't. And it's something that God has closed for me. I
that's all
don't
right, man. That's why we're
get
a
to have
team.
it. It is why we're a team. And it works really well. But I'm saying all that to say just because Ricky was able to read it doesn't mean everybody else is. Use your discernment before
Yep.
you go diving into this.
Yep.
You ask the Holy Spirit, is
Yeah.
this something that you're okay with? You get God's okay.
I'm glad you said that. I do. When I watch some of this stuff, guys, I'll be real honest with you. Like I have some reserves about watching some of this stuff sometimes. I really do, but you know, I I recognize that God has put me in a circumstance where this is what He wants me to shed light on. You know, um,
Right.
I really will kind of echo the sentiment that L.A. Marzulli does. I'm always impressed by that guy. He's so very straightforward about his content.
Yeah, he loves
Um,
Jesus.
he really does. He's like, I was not looking for this. I was a musician. I was just doing my thing. He's like, and God really pulled me this way. And you know what? I think that for me, I mean, I think for both of us, but me especially, like my wake up moment was my real wake up moment was COVID, and it didn't take me long. Like I was already very untrusting of government and everything to begin with, and of authority in general. I'm not telling you to disobey authority. I'm just saying, a healthy dose of skepticism does you really well. And
Yeah.
so God allowed me to walk this path, and this path for me really allowed me to understand my faith. It really allowed me to climb in, like to dig deep into what's happening with my bare hands, like just start pulling out clots of dirt and trying to find the roots. And and this kind of stuff, when I was younger, it's funny, I don't know if you know this show, but I mean, I was like that. I would pick up a book and I would try and understand all these weird religions and where they come from and why they think what they do and what they did. And I don't think at that point in my life I was probably ready for it. And so it actually, I think some stuff that actually did happen in my life that really, God was like, hey, he like kind of pulled me out of that. He's like, no, bro, it's not what you need right now. But God has a time and a place for everything, and I think right now is a place where I can be complimentary to Shelley, and bring you guys this kind of information, and you can verify it for yourself, right? Like I don't have to. You can go and look into it if you want, but Shelley's right. Make sure that you seek the Holy Spirit, before you start diving into all sorts of weird stuff. Because I'll be honest, like sometimes I research something and I'm like, God, am I going insane? Like this is crazy. Should I be reading about this stuff and filling my head with this stuff and then talking to you? And it's a process of using discernment, and I think that it's probably the reason that God has impeded us from seeking out interviews with other people. I don't feel released, and I probably won't until next year, and maybe we'll wait a little bit longer too. I don't know. I'm just trying to be obedient. I think we're really both just trying to be obedient. We would both love to stop working tomorrow and
Heck yeah.
freaking do this all the time, but God's got us where he wants us right now. And
Right.
you guys supporting us is huge, 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 huge. It inspires us to keep going. It is very, my pastor said this a lot. Sorry if I'm rambling, Shell. My pastor says it's lonely at the top, man. It's like, it's real lonely at the top. So when we started climbing this tower, it gets lonelier and lonelier because there's not a lot of
Yeah.
people that share this space with us. And, I always feel like super inferior to all these other people that are learning this stuff and talking about it. But the truth is, there's not a lot of us. There's really not a lot of us that are
No.
really sharing this on a regular basis. So for me, it's a huge privilege to be able to share with you guys. I think for both of us, we feel that way. Like,
Absolutely.
we take your partnership very seriously, and I always am seriously, and I mean this, I'm always trying to find a way to give you guys more content, to make this more relevant to you, to engage you guys more, because we care, because we love you guys, and
Yeah.
what we're doing to us is extremely important, and it is a ministry to us. Rant over.
Absolutely. Good rant. It's your support and I don't mean of viewers like you. I mean your support, your encouraging words, even your like, I don't know
Yeah,
about that. With
even your
your honest
disagreements.
dialogue, like, oh,
It means you're
it's
sinking into the word, man.
it's just way, way more of a blessing to us than we can tell you guys. It's a big, big deal. And we always want to be faithful to um, be worthy
Hmm.
of the time that you take to listen to us.
Yeah, certainly.
And we want to always be careful to caution where caution is due.
Sure.
And so that is why we say with this, you make sure that you are prayed up, that you are called to do it. Um, Otherwise, you don't really have a need to
Enjoy the
um,
information.
to run in deep to
Yeah,
this. So
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
Um, I mean, if God calls you, be
Do it.
obedient because he is faithful to his callings
And
always.
and it's super interesting that you make that point because, dude, I wanted to play music. I just wanted to share the
I
gospel, play music,
know.
and make noise. I was not looking to do a podcast. I really wasn't. Um, and God very clearly pulled me in this direction, and it was the right fit. Like I knew it was the right fit. I felt I had been feeling for the longest time that I had something to share with people. Like I really needed to talk. I needed to get my voice out there, and I didn't know how to do it. And I was like, no, but I don't. I just want to play music. Like I just kind of want to promote myself online and my music. And nah, man, that's not what
Yeah.
happened. It's not what happened. So God is good.
Yes. Y'all, we love you very much and we want to bless you guys and let you go because
It's
work's
late.
going to be here in just a few hours.
Yeah, yeah. I have to be up at like 7, which is like
Mm.
4 hours away. So yeah,
Yay.
it's my wife and I's birth anniversary tomorrow. So that's gonna be fun.
Oh, yay,
Woo! I only got
Ricky.
one gig tomorrow, supposedly, so it'll be a chill.
Nice. You'll have a long weekend. That's so exciting.
I will indeed. Hey guys, don't forget, you guys get a discount. We will give you guys free shipping on any of these you guys want. Just contact me. We're not going to be unreasonable with pricing. You guys get a discount. You guys already support us. So
That's the coolest one. I really like that.
That's right.
Transhuman.
Look at this bad boy. Yeah. We'll have more coming soon, and we're working on shirts. I guarantee you we will, but I'm just slow, guys. Sorry. We're old and busy and trying to get stuff done. So, but they are ready. If you guys want some,
True story. Okay.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord give you peace.
Turn his countenance
upon you and give you peace.
Amen.
Shalom. God bless.
Shalom, shalom. Maranatha, guys. We'll talk with you soon. Good night.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Christian Theological Dark Web. For questions or comments, please email us at thechristiantheologicaldarkweb@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, please look for the Patreon link in the description. This has been another production of CTDW Studios. Thank you, and God bless.